Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to part 4 of my Higurashi When They Cry Matsuribayashi Let's Play. In the last episode, shocker, there was actually some gameplay as I have to connect all of the fragments from the different chapters in order to create the perfect miracle timeline in which we defeat Takano. So I've been having fun with that. It seems like I'm kind of on the right path thanks to you guys for, your comments letting me know that I'm doing things right, and the game will let me know if I'm not doing things right. Also, I just want to let everybody know, unfortunately, next Friday, so that will be November 6th, there will be no episode of Higurashi because my husband and I will be moving next week, which is very exciting, but it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of stuff that we need to get done. So, unfortunately, I will not have time to record next week. Hopefully, you guys are okay with that. Maybe I'll try and see if I can make this episode a little bit longer to make up for it. But anyway, we are going to get back into it. I'm going to keep connecting these fragments and see what happens next. So let's go. Okay. I have to try and remember what the heck I was doing. I'm just jumping right back into this. Trying to remember what I have done and haven't done. Although the game will apparently tell me if I do not have the fragments needed. But I want to try and see if I can get this maybe in one shot. Unlikely, but we're going to try. Okay, so we haven't had the moves yet. Awareness of sins. I don't think he's aware of sins yet. Oh, conflict between Hosho family and Sonozaki family is required. So we're going to get into Rika's backstory a little bit more here. I ran into Satoko while on my way to the grocery store for my mother. Satoko said she was going there too, so we decided to go together. After exchanging our shopping lists, it became easy to guess what the other family would be having for dinner. Oh, is this them, like, becoming friends for the first time, or do they already know each other by now? Satoko's family is having grilled fish and cooked vegetables. We're having Salisbury steak.
あら、ハンバーグとは羨ましいですわね。私、魚はともかく煮物というのがちょっと怖いんですのよ。先日買ったかぼちゃがまだだいぶ残ってるみたいなんですもの。きっと今夜もかぼちゃの煮物三昧なのです。
Yeah, obviously they're friends at this point, so Rika's mother is still alive, and her father is still alive.
かわいそかわいそなのです。あらかじめかぼちゃが出てくると分かっているのも憂鬱でございますわね。はあ、突然かぼちゃを出されても怒るくせに贅沢なさとこなのです。リカにだって少しは嫌いな食べ物があるはずですわよ。そういえばリカ、大福とかシュークリームとか甘いものが嫌いだったんではございませんこと？別に嫌いではないのです。意地悪で食べないだけなのですよ。食べる気なら何個でも食べられちゃいますのです。
She's like, I just don't eat them because I'm punishing on you.
パンプキンパイだって美味しくいただけますのですよ。ミパー。リカだけ好き嫌いがないなんてずるいですわ。
I'm definitely a Sadako. I'm a little bit of a picky eater, especially when it comes to vegetables. Conversations like this are how I have fun. Sadako is my best friend. I usually don't like grocery shopping, but if I'm with Satoko, I can make it into an enjoyable evening stroll. Near the supermarket, there's a grocer's and other shops forming a little shopping district. The grocery store is busy this time of day. All the housewives in Hinimizawa gather here to shop. Since Satoko and I have different things to buy, we decide to do our shopping separately.
いらっしゃい、いらっしゃい。おや、リカちゃま、お買い物かい？えらいね。
ミパー、僕はお買い物ができる偉い子なのです。
そうかそうか。
She's like, give me free shit because I'm cute.
ほら、偉い子のご褒美にこれをあげよう。
There were several candies for the owner's occasional asthma attack inside a sieve, full of change hanging in the front. He picked out a sweet from there and gave it to me. It was my favorite flavor, strawberry milk. I put it in my pocket so I could brag about it to Satoko later. I get a lot of fun out of teasing Satoko and making her jealous. Oh, that's just so sad knowing like how much the villagers don't like Satoko and how Rika gets preferential treatment. Rika didn't even realize like how that might bum her out a bit. She always overreacts, so I never get bored when I'm with her.
おや、リカちゃまのところは今日は何だい？豚のひき肉だと。
のですよ。お花の形の目玉焼きを乗っけてケチャップでお絵かきをするのです。
おははは、それはいいね。
I enjoyed that conversation while filling my shopping basket. But then I overheard some women whispering, oh, probably about Sadako. They're talking about something that's a little harsh. They're talking about Sadako. How long do the village traders plan to stay here? They should just leave. They don't even have the guts to go shopping themselves and make their daughter do it instead. The women went on and on. Ever since the Hojo family and the Sonozaki family got into a huge fight at the explanatory meeting for the dam project, the Hojo family has been ostracized within the village. At first, there was a significant number of families in favor of leaving like the Hojos. But the main branch of the Sonozakis led a push to completely solidify the village's opinion, and as that tone of unified resistance grew stronger, the pro-evacuation families steadily grew quiet. The public harassment led by the Sonozakis and Kimiyoshis, two of the three families with powerful influence on the village, also played an effect too. The Sonozaki family made the Hojo family into an example to ensure there would be no more pro-evacuation supporters. The ancestors of the villagers have lived here for generations, and the villagers also know that they themselves will be buried in this village, so this harassment put a lot of pressure on them. Who was it that agreed to make the Hojo family the leader of the pro-evacuation group at that explanatory meeting? Those same people no longer said anything, and they even joined in on harassing the Hojo family. The harassment they faced then became pressure from the entire village. Hojo family is hardly wealthy, and they haven't paid the town council fees in a long time. When things were peaceful, nobody said anything about it. But now that the wind was blowing a different way, the Hojo family was asked to pay off all their late council fees immediately. It wasn't an amount they could afford, but the Hojos recognized a fight was being picked with them, and they responded to it. And so the Hojo family quit the town council. But that only played right into the village's evil plan. Making an enemy of the town council meant facing vicious harassment. For example, the place the Hojos dumped their trash was a provisional dumping site established by the town council and the waste management department. Under the council agreement, only council members could use it. Ever since the day the Hojo family quit the village council, their trash bags were returned to their front door. Furthermore, all the bags were torn. On top of that, a sign went up on the hedge road near the Hojo family. It said, "Private road, no trespassing. Only council members permitted." A stubborn old man stood and guarded the road, saying he would not let any of the Hojo family members pass through. A private road is private property opened up to the public, so it looks just like a normal road. However, as private property, the owner can forbid anyone else to pass through whenever they like. More and more, the village piled on vicious harassment. The fear of antagonism spread through the entire village, and people became afraid if they supported the Hojo family, they'd go through the same thing. This had made the Hojo family even more isolated. The grown-ups haven't told their kids about what's going on, so Satoko isn't harassed in any way at school. But it wasn't hard to imagine she probably spent her days feeling so anxious she could hardly breathe. Even the women whispering in here aren't saying anything directly to Satoko. But it's not like she doesn't notice their muttering and their cold stares. When did this village become so cold towards her? As her best friend, it's very sad for me. Satoko's shopping experience is nothing like mine. When I say hello or buy things, I usually get treats or a discount, but that doesn't happen to Satoko. On the contrary, she's served last on purpose, and sometimes shop owners even pretend they don't hear her. Obviously, people don't want to have anything to do with her. Satoko had been weaving through the housewives crowding the shop, telling the fishmonger what she wanted, but she kept getting ignored. She's decided to keep her smile and pretend she doesn't mind, but I know. It was far too painful for her to endure. At that point, Satoko dropped her coins on the ground. Maybe her finger got stuck on something when she was trying to put the change back into her wallet. I ran through the crowd to help her pick them up. But as I did, I noticed something. Satoko dropped a lot of coins and is struggling to pick all of them up, but nobody is helping her. It's not just that. It's almost like they're acting like they don't even see her there. Satoko isn't expecting anyone to help her since she's the one who dropped them. But, there are so many people around, and not even one of them is trying to aid her.
さとこ、僕も拾いますですよ。大丈夫ですわよ、リカ。
That reaction is all I need to tell me how hurt she is. Furthermore, when I started to help Satoko, other housewives started to pick up the coins too. as if it's the natural thing to do. So they can only help if a shrine maiden of the Furde family does. If I didn't help, they would have disregarded her completely. And the fact that other people helped only because I did hurt Satoko even more. I grabbed the coins from the housewives without thanking them. I'd rather spit at them than do that. Oh man, this whole thing.
ありがとうございますわ。
This whole backstory is just gonna be like, how are we gonna make Satoko and Satoshi even more sad and pathetic and make me feel so bad for them?
リカ。皆さん、
If she didn't thank them, people would talk about that too. Satoko forced out her words of gratitude. The housewives looked down at her with blank expressions. I can't stand this. I can't stand what Satoko is going through right now.
お買い物が終わりましたら行きましょうです。さとこ。ええ。
I grabbed Satoko's arm and pulled her away. I was frustrated, sad, and bitter. What has Satoko done? Reality is just too cruel. Everyone loves me. But can I share that love with Satoko? Satoko must be wondering why people treat me so differently. I shouldn't come shopping with her. Or rather, I should have done her shopping instead.
さとこ。なんですのリカ。小銭をばらまいてしまって、かわいそうかわいそうなのです。なので、これはさとこへの残念賞なのですよ。
It's the candy, right? I wanted to at least ease her pain a little bit, so I pulled out the strawberry milk candy I just received. But Satoko refused to take it.
その飴はリカがもらったものではありませんの。
My hand froze. She saw me getting this candy.
渡した人だってリカに食べてほしいと思って渡したんですわ。だから私が食べたら失礼ですわよ。
Satoko turned her back on me and kept walking. She's like, I don't want pity. Without even saying goodbye, she continued to her house with the shopping bags in her hand. I only wanted to ease her pain, but I ended up rubbing salt in her wound. How can I call myself her best friend? If I could, I would have crushed the candy right there. Oh boy, it's all so sad. So, I'm wondering, it seems like it is kind of leaning towards Satoko and Satoshi right now, so maybe that's the way I have to do it. Like I said, the game will tell me if I'm doing things wrong, but I want to see how far I can go before I do get something saying like, oh, strawberry milk candy is required. Okay, so maybe all the introductions first. Well, let's do this one, Mion Sonozaki. Mion-san, your friend is here. I heard the housekeeper's voice. Our house and the front yard are huge, so unlike normal houses, ringing a doorbell or yelling my name repeatedly asking to play won't work.
あ、はいはい。ありがとうございます。どなたです？
Rika Furde-chama. See, this is interesting, I guess. I mean, Mio must know, obviously, that Satoko is ostracized and the family is ostracized, and yet she became friends anyway. I wonder if that happened, like they were friends beforehand and she refused to give up their friendship, or if she kind of took Satoko in because she felt bad for her.
あー、来たね来たね。ばっちゃんにリカちゃまが来たって伝えてもらえます？多分、あっちの縁側にいると思います。私はスイカを引き上げてきますね。
Granny received many beautiful watermelons from somebody, so she wanted to share. I just called the Furde house a short time ago, and Rika-chan is here to pick one up as long as it's not soy sauce. Did she come on her bicycle? I can't remember if it has a big enough basket. I pulled the watermelon from the well while thinking about that. The cold water in the well has refrigerated the watermelon, and the condensation makes it look delicious. The 3 members of the Furde family will enjoy it for at least 2 nights.
お持ち帰りだったのですか。僕はてっきり。
あれ？おじさんそう言わなかったっけ？
The priest answered the phone and I thought I told him to come pick it up. Maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe he misunderstood me completely. But she's here to eat the watermelon, not take it home. Besides, the small basket on Rika-chan's bicycle wouldn't hold the watermelon, and it's too dangerous for her to ride while holding it in her hands.
ミオン、お前リカちゃまんちまで超持ってったらな。スイカ片手な自転車なんこがれんって。
みー、僕だってスイカくらい持てますのですよ。
危な危な危な。リカちゃまに何かあったらお社様に申し訳立たんね。うちのミオンが運ぶんね。
はいはい、任せられたったら。じゃあついでに神主さんにご挨拶でもしてこようかね。
No matter whether she rides or pushes her bicycle, Rika-chan's hands will be occupied. So I'm going to carry the watermelon. The sky is turning auburn in the sunset. The cool breeze feels good on my sandaled feet. The plastic bag I'm carrying contains the watermelon, and also some small bags of rock candy. If her mother finds them, she'll take them away, so we decided to eat them before we got to her home. We opened the bags and enjoyed the rock candy. Rika-chan isn't an exception. Whenever kids from our neighborhood come to our house for errands, Granny gives them some treats, except for Satoko. No treats for Satoko. Actually, that's a pretty common rule here in Hinimizawa. It's funny, but sometimes when parents aren't watching, siblings will fight over who gets to take the circular notice to the next house over. So these bags of rock candy are like tips for them. Of course, she doesn't normally give out this much. Usually it's just a little piece of it. Granny is being extra nice to Rika-chama.
僕だけこんなにいろいろお駄賃をもらうと、他の人に悪い気がしますです。
別に気にすることないんじゃない？お駄賃は好意みたいなもんなんだもん。変に断るよりは子供らしくありがとうって言って笑顔を見せる方がよっぽどいいと思うけどね。
みーはお駄賃をよくもらいますですか？
昔はね。でもさすがにこの年になったらもらわなくなったな。今もらうとなんだか子供扱いされてるみたいでかえってカチンとくるかな。
みー、僕は子供扱いなのです。
いいじゃんいいじゃん。
That's the funny thing, because in terms of her mind, Rika's older than all of them.
もらえるうちにもらっとけばいい。私くらいになれば欲しくてももらえなくなるんだからさ。
As we talked about ordinary things, I noticed Rika-chan seemed a little sad.
どうしたの？
僕はお買い物に行ってもよくお駄賃に飴をもらいますが、さとこは一緒に行ってももらえませんです。
I can think of so many reasons why. Not only Sadako, but everyone in the Hojo family is being treated poorly in Hinimizawa. And the Sonozaki family are the ones who instigated that. The 2 dam supporters have died in an accident already. But the malice against the Hojo family is still going. It's directed against Sadako and Satoshi, their children, and the aunt and uncle who are taking care of them. The big fight between the Hojo family and the Sonozaki family at the explanatory meeting started all this. But that was the Hojo couple, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the children and their aunt and uncle. But the idea that the Hojo family are traitors evolved on its own. Therefore, anyone bearing the Hojo name is to be treated poorly. The aunt and uncle weren't dam supporters. So over time, the attacks towards them should have stopped. But they're rather odd, and they keep having trouble with their neighbors. They don't follow the community rules, they don't do their community duties, and they spray pesticide when the neighbor's laundry is still hanging outside. They often get into fights with the other villagers. They'd be hated even without the dam. Therefore, the Hojo family continues to be treated poorly. But none of that should have anything to do with Sadako and Satoshi. Sadako and Satoshi are often depressed at school. I tried to leave the conflict between the 2 families aside, but I wonder how they really feel about that. From their point of view, I'm just another member of the family that keeps harassing them.
せめて学校にはそんな雰囲気を持ち込ませたくない。だから私はそういう風に振る舞ってるつもりだよ。
それを学校の中だけでなく、外にも広げるにはどうしたらいいのですか？
I mean, Sadako seems to genuinely, like Mion, and I'm sure Satoshi did to some degree, but that's gotta feel almost worse than if Mion just treated them the same at school and outside of school. It almost feels like she's being two-faced about it. That would be pretty difficult. The Hojo family made enemies of the 3 families. They were branded as traitors, and that's still considered the truth. It wouldn't mean anything if one person suggested an end to the hostilities just because the events around the dam are history now. On the contrary, that would just put them in the same position. Unfortunately for Sadako and Satoshi, the only thing they can do is wait patiently until the issue withers away. All I can do for them is provide an oasis until that day comes.
では、 さとこたちはいつまで耐え忍べばいいのですか？
わかんない。ダム戦争は数年に及んだ。その時に押された烙印を払拭するんだから、それと同じ年数はかかるかもしれないね。
それはつまり、さとこたちが大人になるまで誰にも許してもらえないということですか？さとこが子供のうちはずっとずっと村中から冷たい目で見られていろということですか？
それはあまりにも辛いね。
みー、僕たちはさとこやサトシの仲間なのですよね。
そうだよ。私にとってだって仲間だよ。
なら僕たちの仲間を救うために僕たちに何かできることはないのでしょうか？
私たちに何ができるんだろうね。
Even if the Sonozaki family declares that the dam conflict is over so the Hojo family are no longer outcasts, that won't solve the problem. It's not that simple. In the first place, Granny hates the Hojo family and won't suffer their name to be mentioned in her presence. It's not a matter of someone forgiving another. It's a matter of very complicated ties between the people in this village. It's absolutely terrifying to have them as your enemies. Everyone knows that very well, and that's why they maintain good relationships with their neighbors. However, if you make enemies of them, you'll have to face the consequences. That's the unwritten law of the Japanese community. And the Sonozaki family is a part of this unwritten law. Now that the Hojo family are outcast, not even the Sonozaki family can overturn the situation.
ひなみざわのことは、ひなみざわの人間にはどうしようもないということなのでしょうか？
悲しいけど、そういうこともあるかもしれない。もし、サトコを救う人が現れてくれるとしたら、
We had to wait for Keiichi to come in, an outsider to come in and fix everything.
それは、村のしがらみにとらわれない、そういう人なんだろうね。でも、そんな人、村にはいない。
Keiichi really was like the White Knight coming in and just fixing everything.
村の外から誰かが助けに来なければ救われないということですか？
Like Rika-chan says, would a knight... That's funny, I called him a white knight. Would a knight in shining armor from the outside world ever come here? Would that person bring in a new wind into this village that has been filled with stale air for hundreds of years? No way. That's just wishful thinking. Time will solve the problem someday. Until then, I have to be their ally. I can't think of anything else I can do for them. As Rika-chan and I crunched on our raw candy, we can only pray people will forgive Sadako and her family sooner rather than later. Rika-chan gently broke the heavy silence.
きっと、
え？
きっと、村の外から、しがらみにとらわれない人がやってきます。
そうだね。
I was gonna say, is that voice change, is that just for the audience to know that that's, you know, the, like, real Rika, quote unquote, the old Rika speaking? Or do the other people hear her voice change, and if so, nobody ever brings it up, be like, why do you sound like you're 20 years older sometimes?
ダム戦争も終わったんだから、また分譲地に外から人が引っ越してきてくれるといいね。近い年の転校生とか来れば楽しいだろうに。
来ます。きっと。そして、彼と力を合わせて、私たちは、村の悪兵を打ち破るのです。それが、私たちの未来を閉ざす、3つの錠前に対する、最初の鍵。
え？何それ？なんかの小説？
Rika-chan says some odd things sometimes. When she talks that way, she seems so mature. I even start to doubt she's really younger than I am. Okay, so they do notice the change. The unreasonable antagonism towards the Hojo family. Will there really be someone from the outside who will shatter our old traditions? Alright, so all this stuff pretty much is inconsequential. None of these I can do right now. So let's go back to the very beginning. Okay, third year's curse. L5 station dissection. Help from the Queen Carrier. Live specimen for research required. Tragedy at the construction. Oh, crap. Okay. A live specimen is required. Okay, so the tragedy at the dam construction site happened. Hospitalization of Sadako Hojo. Oh! That happened. Okay, so this is a potential one here. Rika's father being marked as an opportunist is required. Rika's mother's suspicion. The death of Sadako's aunts hasn't happened yet. Help from the Queen Carrier is required. Okay. I think it's probably going to be a bat to beat her to death. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. Irie's reminiscence. Prior consent. Oh boy. Death of Koizumi-sensei. Completion of the medicine. Okay, I think it's going to be that first one there. Okay, yeah, let's go back to the beginning here. It was this one. Satoshi-kun is a good brother who takes great care of his sister. He went to visit Sadako-chan straight after school and kept encouraging her to get better every day. Without even hearing Satoshi-kun's stories, it's obvious to me that Sadako-chan never had a good relationship with her step-parents. She especially didn't get along with her stepfather. Sadako-chan even called a child abuse hotline once. Not only that, her parents ended up dying in an accident, so she wasn't able to withstand all that damage. Sadako-chan is still very young, so everything must have been horrible for her to go through. Fortunately, she has a wonderful brother. Emotional wounds are hard to heal, but nothing heals those wounds better than love from family members. I'm sure that one day Sadako-chan will be able to smile again. She's still in shock, but when she talks to Satoshi-kun, she smiles a little bit. Oishi from the police department kept requesting to see her, but I think I need to protect her for just a little longer. While he's passionate about his job, I wish he'd be a touch more sensitive. If he reminds her of her parents' accident, her emotional wounds will start to open again. That's the one point I worry about with Sadako-chan. I heard someone knocking on the door. It was Takano-san. It doesn't look right wearing a nurse's uniform like that. She's a licensed doctor, so she should be wearing a white coat and act like one. Maybe this is fun for her, but I think she might be insulting the real nurses. I didn't say anything, though.
Irie 先生、ちょっとよろしいですか？
ああ、はい。それではサトシ君、私は失礼します。
あ、はい。サトシ君、こんにちは。さとこちゃんと遊んであげててね。ずっと一人でいるからきっと寂しいと思うの。ね？
そんなことございませんわよ。
ではサトシ君、よろしくお願いします。
I got up and let Satoshi-kun take over.
ところで、何かありましたか？
ここではなんですので、所長室で。
Oh no, that's never good when she laughs like that. Takano, and there's that sound, so definitely nothing good's happening. Takano-san smiled meaningfully. Usually, smiles bring happy feelings. But when it comes to Takano-san, that's rarely the case.
それは本当ですか？
ええ。簡易検査の結果、レベル3以上と思われる高い発症レベルの可能性が指摘されました。彼女をさらに入院させ、より精度の高い検査を行う必要があります。結果待ちですが、私の見たところ、レベル4の可能性すらあり得るかと。
Takano-san's eyes sparkled in a weird way. There's a reason for that. For us, finding patients in the terminal stage is a valuable boon to our research. Oh, there was something about a live specimen. That's probably going to be Sadako, right? In fact, as a result of dissecting the murder suspect from last year, we've made great progress in our research. In other words, we finally managed to isolate the pathogen. We also discovered when the host dies, the pathogen melts away within a few hours. Once that happens, it's undetectable. That's why we never found the pathogen when we performed autopsies. Our research made a lot of progress after that. What we found in the past year has easily surpassed what the late Dr. Takano found in decades. We're now studying the nature, the effect, and the symptoms of the pathogen, as well as treatments and vaccines. In other words, a living specimen who's at the terminal stage is a necessity for our research. However, we rarely find a patient who's gone that far, who's reached L5. Hinimizawa Syndrome once created huge numbers of L5 patients, but today it doesn't have such potency. Because of that, we have to secure L5 patients or patients who are close to reaching L5 as quickly as possible. Satoko-chan possibly qualifies to be that next sacrifice. Do you have to say it like that, sacrifice? To keep this strange disease a secret, we can't let patients who may be at L5 go. We have to run more tests first, then we'll figure out what to do next. In any case, Satoko-chan seems so calm. Her behavior is nothing like the man from last year. Initial tests are in error sometimes. We'll have to wait for the results of more detailed tests to determine how serious her condition is.
わかりました。
経過観察のため入院ということにしましょう。スタッフの皆さんへの手配をお願いいたします。
That sounds like a formal answer, but if the results come back positive, that will be the green light for her dissection. I don't know Satoko-chan that well, but I've known her brother Satoshi-kun through the baseball team for a long time. How could I dissect the apple of Satoshi-kun's eyes? I can feel scary images flashing in my head for the first time. Now it makes sense why Irie protects Satoko so much. I think it's a little bit of, like, guilt, and also, you know, like Satoshi being gone and her not having anyone, him feeling guilty about basically treating like she's like a lab rat.
ご安心を。
Meanwhile, Takano, when she was being friends with Satoko, that was all just an act.
万事すでに手配させておりますわ。
She smiled as if telling me the dissection is already being prepared for, too. Is it just her who's smiling? Am I smiling like her, too? When I dissected that man last year, I did feel guilt beforehand. But once I started, it was like I was in paradise. All the pieces of the puzzle that were left by the late Dr. Takano fell into place, and at the same time they didn't. How exciting it was. Knowing we were the first ones to take the first steps to solve a mystery, that is. I don't even know how to explain this feeling to those who have never experienced it. There's no way to describe it with words. The only thing I can say is even a year later I still remember it vividly. So if the results show Satoshi-kun's beloved sister is to be dissected, can I control myself? Can I stay calm? But that means I'm a failure of a human being. I know very well the Hosho family was treated poorly by the villagers, and I know what Satoko-chan had to go through. Also, I know Satoshi-kun loves his sister, who is his one and only blood relative. How can I dissect Satoko-chan using my research as an excuse? Obviously, he changed his mind on it maybe after Satoshi disappeared, and Satoko obviously would have gone into even more distress, and if she wasn't an L5 patient before, she definitely would be after Satoshi's disappearance. Maybe he flipped it and be like, I'm not gonna dissect her, I'm gonna try and find a cure for her instead. I didn't feel much guilt for the man from last year, but I feel unbearable guilt towards Satoko-chan. That means what I did last year was very sinful. I don't care if a stranger dies, but I don't want Satoko-chan to die. That's not right. All lives are equally precious. I try to convince myself he was a violent murderer, but maybe he only became that way because he was at the terminal stage. I don't know anything about him before he became deranged. Maybe he was a model citizen who was worthy of respect. Unfortunately, he became ill and ended up doing what he did. Maybe he was a victim himself. Just like my father. Ooh, I know more about Hinimizawa Syndrome than anyone. Okay. Something about Irie's father. This disease makes people act in bizarre ways, without those people realizing it. So when the people at the terminal stage do such strange and violent things, one should be sympathetic. I already knew that back when I decided to go down this path. I should have remembered it sooner, but I only did just now. I finally realized what sinful research I'm working on. Satoko Hosho's detailed test results came back. The results say L5. She's at the terminal stage of the terminal stage. It's actually a surprising result. In last year's case, the patient was extremely deranged. According to Takano-san's records, He complained about itching coming from the lymph nodes all over his body and wanted to claw at his throat, just as the late Dr. Takano mentioned. But Sadako-chan isn't displaying such, which is funny because I feel like of everybody, Sadako was the only one, other than Rika, who never really... No, that's not necessarily true. Mio never really had that moment. Shion did, Rena did, Keiichi did, but Sadako, who is a terminal patient, even early on, she never really displayed those. Like, she definitely had moments where she was imagining things, like with her, with the uncle, and believing he was alive when he wasn't, and all that stuff. So she has the symptoms, but she never became, like, super violent. I mean, unless you count her killing her parents, which still not 100% confirmed yet. Even in the late Takano's data, throat clawing is said to be a characteristic symptom of terminal stage patients. However, not all patients experience that symptom. Besides, emotional expression is very different in each person. Okay, I guess he's explaining it here. Even if it's the same emotion, one patient may express it rather violently, and another may express it calmly. There's no way of knowing by just looking at a person. But Sadako-chan's detailed test results say she's at the terminal stage of the terminal stage, L5. In other words, she may be feeling what the man from last year was feeling. It's just that she isn't expressing that feeling in the same way the man was. Hinimizawa Syndrome affects the frontal lobes of the brain. It stimulates the most primitive of emotions, doubt, very strongly. As a result, terminal patients are trapped in delusions and paranoia and end up committing horrible crimes. Sadako-chan seems to show improvement when she's exchanging friendly words with Satoshi-kun, but there's a paranoia stirring inside her that may put her in a deranged state at any moment. I can't let her leave the clinic like this. However, if things go according to the manual, I'll have to make a decision on her dissection. My decision will only be a formality. I can't actually refuse. Takano-san appears to already be working on the dissection schedule. That plan will then come to me. Would I feel the same way while dissecting Sadako-chan? Would I be able to experience that trance once again? No, the question is, can I fight the temptation? As I pretend to question myself, I'm letting Takano-san prepare things on her own. By doing so, am I passively agreeing to Sadako-chan's dissection? If possible, I want to save Sadako-chan. I don't want her to be a sacrifice for this research. Maybe that was the moment that the Tokyo group turned on Erie, because he obviously refused to do it because Sadako was still alive. I don't want to dissect her. Then what about the man from last year? Do I only care about the lives of people I know? If I don't dissect her, do I let her live and leave the clinic? Do I simply wait for her to become deranged and commit a horrible crime? And then she'll end up here just like the man from last year, and I'll end up dissecting her anyway. The man from last year was dissected alive, and kept that way for several months, Jesus. With his skull left open, he wasn't allowed to die for several months. He was kept alive just for our cruel experiments. Okay, this is pretty messed up, but this reminds me of... I think there was a Japanese worker. He was working in some sort of... He was working with chemicals, I believe, and there was some sort of explosion or something, or he got... or radiation. I think he got infected with radiation enough that where it would basically kill him, but it didn't kill him. It just basically burned up his whole body, and they experimented on him, and they left him alive, I think, for like 60 days or something, and he died multiple times, and they kept bringing him back. And if you guys want to, like, there's pictures and stuff. I don't recommend it if you're squeamish, not at all. I saw it and I regret it. I regret it so badly seeing that picture, but the story is fascinating. And I hate this, I remember the name because people would make jokes about it. I think, like, his name was, like, Ouchie or something, which is, you know, because, like, he was in pain, Ouchie. That's all I remember, something about radiation, I believe, and them experimenting on him, and he was alive the whole time, and I believe he just kept telling them, like, let me die, and his body was, like, 99% burnt. It's pretty fucked up. It's fucked up that stuff like this actually happens. I don't want to do that to her. I don't know what to do. Even debating and agonizing over it is leading towards consent to her dissection by elimination. Well, yeah, Erie's definitely not, He's not completely innocent. Shades of gray all over the place of just being like, you know, do you do these experiments for the greater good, you know? And the whole thing where it's like he's having second thoughts because he knows the victim, he knows the patient this time. Okay, obviously the discontinuation of her dissection plan is required. So obviously we knew that was going to happen because, well, she's still alive. The third year of Oishiro-sama. Okay. An L5 stage patient's dissection is required. Help from the Queen Carrier is required. Okay, here we go. Live specimen for research is required. A tragedy at the dam construction site is required. It's the first sacrifice. So now we're getting into the deaths. I was half asleep, so I didn't even hear the phone ringing nearby. After a while, I finally realized the phone was ringing, and a ringing phone means there's some kind of emergency. It's 2 in the morning. Who would even call me at this time of night?
もしもし、入江です。
お休みのところ申し訳ございませんわ。入江所長。
It's Takano-san. She's never called me for a personal reason. At the institute, she's ranked just below me, so she's basically responsible for running it. So for her to call me this late at night, it must be an emergency.
遅くなりました。末期患者が出たというのは本当ですか？
ええ。生きた検体が欲しいと思っていたら本当に運よく。
Oh boy, this is gonna be fucked up. This is gonna be what he just talked about with like the live patient. I initially thought she'd abducted someone. She absolutely could if she wanted to. The man had already been moved to the research area in the clinic's basement. Having been tied down to the examination table, he's struggling against his restraints, but more as though he's deranged than actually resisting. I can't even understand what he's saying. He sounds angry, sorrowful, and like a child throwing a tantrum all at once. It's obvious he's not in the right state of mind.
とにかく麻酔で眠らせましょう。このままでは自分の舌を飲み込んで窒息しかねません。
もう少し状態を観察したかったのですけれど、仕方ありませんわね。
One of the staff with a white gown got the anesthesia ready. Even a normal person would struggle to escape a restraining table in this suspicious room. But this man's behavior is at an abnormal level. I'm sure Okanagi-san and his friends from the Mountain Dogs are the ones who captured him. Capturing a man in this state of mind couldn't have been an easy task. According to Takano, she ran into this patient on her way home from the clinic by accident. She brought him back here, tested him, and the result came back positive. Of course, I have no intention of just believing what she's telling me. But there is no question that this man is at the terminal stage, and a live specimen is exactly what we need to research the syndrome. Man, when you think about that, when you think about them doing live dissections, it just makes me think of all the times the Mountain Dogs and the White Vans were following people like Rena and Keiichi around because they probably sensed that they were starting to get to that L5 stage. They were showing the paranoia and stuff, so they were basically like just watching them and waiting and basically ready to kidnap them and potentially like dissect them alive, which is so messed up.
一体この男は何
It's
者
funny,
です
like I'm even making like even this late in the story, I'm making these connections, thinking back to like that white van that almost ran Keiichi over and the white van that was following Rena around. It's just like, oh my gosh, like that's probably what they were doing. They were just watching them waiting.
あの男が持っていた新聞の包み。
And then yeah, at the end of the first episode with Keiichi is where they talked about calling the manager, calling Coach, and the white van. That's probably what he's gonna do. He's gonna bring Keiichi back to the clinic, and he was going to do experiments on him.
中に何が入っていたと思います？
Or maybe he wasn't.
これは何です
Maybe he wasn't going to do that anymore because, like, maybe Satoko's changed his mind on all that stuff and he refused to do live dissections. I could see that happening. So maybe all that stuff I just said was not true. There's something wrapped in a bloody newspaper on a tray nearby. Looking at the blood-drenched paper, I can only imagine there's something gruesome inside of it. Yet Takano-san looked like she wanted to surprise me with something interesting. I'm not going to be accepting any birthday presents from Takano.
これはひどい。
It's a bloody right arm. The man on the table still has his. This right arm doesn't belong to him. Oh, okay. So who does it belong to? Oh, that makes sense. It's one of the construction workers. Obviously, he'd go into fits of paranoia after murdering someone. I'm used to looking at things like this as a doctor, but the horrible cross-section makes me want to look away. It wasn't done according to a medically accepted method, that's for sure. It was obviously done out of cruelty.
状況から考えて、この男が切り取ったものと考えていいでしょうね。
つまり彼は近隣で起こった何らかの事件の犯人ということですね。
At that point, there was no way of knowing who the right arm belonged to. But the next morning, the dismemberment murder of the damn construction site director was reported, and they mentioned that his right arm was still missing, so we learned who the arm belonged to.
この男、前科者だそうで、しかもその上、執行猶予期間中だとか。にもかかわらず、また罪を犯してしまうなんて。それで、殺人の発覚を恐れて、遺体を隠そうと思ったのでしょうね。
状況にもよるでしょうが、懲役数年で済むというものではなさそうですね。
入江所長もこんな社会のクズが相手なら解剖に躊躇はないのでは？
社会のクズがさらに犯罪を重ね、さらにその上hinimizawa沢症候群で凶暴化したのか、それとも前科を食い入る善良な小市民がhinimizawa沢症候群で凶暴化して罪を犯したのか、どちらかは分かりません。前者ならともかく、後者ならば彼には何の罪もありませんよ。
That's why Hinimizawa Syndrome is so terrifying. We can't tell if the syndrome is the cause of the crime or if it's simply a problem of a human nature. But what causes a defect of human nature in the first place? That was precisely Erie's area of research. Hate the crime, not the criminal. Can criminals only be corrected by punishing them with imprisonment? If a person commits a crime because of a mental disorder but then gets treatment, he's corrected. In other words, there are no crimes in this world, only patients awaiting treatment without anyone else being able to understand them. In medieval times, patients with mental disorders were said to be possessed by demons and they were either confined or killed. Centuries after, they were finally acknowledged as mentally ill patients who needed treatment. Perception can change with time. Even if they are called criminals now, maybe after several centuries, those criminals would be acknowledged as patients who were entitled to appropriate treatment. Explaining crimes through illness instead of malice. That's my life's work. Hinimizawa Syndrome is a strange disease that can support my theory. Solving its mysteries is extremely important to me. To solve those mysteries, I need a medical sacrifice. It's an extremely sinful thing to do, but there's no way to unravel this without it. The Erie Institute was authorized to take such drastic measures if necessary. That's why I was asked about it so many times when I accepted the position of director. And finally, the opportunity is here. This will be the first step of our research on this strange disease. But even now, I'm a little hesitant. I've opened up human bodies in many surgeries. What I'll be doing on this man is something very similar, but there's also something that's very different. What I did before was part of treatment. I did it to save the patients' lives. I did it so the patients could have a better future. But what I'm trying to do here isn't treatment. He will die at the end of it. His death will be far from humane. I'm going to violate nature and force him to stay alive while I open up his living brain.
入江所長、聞いてらっしゃいます？
ああ、すみません。もう一度お願いします。
解剖計画書を提出し、東京に応援を要請した方が良いかと思います。何しろ、単に生きてるだけでなく、末期症状を起こしている大変貴重な検体ですもの。慎重な解剖が求められますわね。
そうですね。おっしゃる通りです。そのようにしましょう。
それまでに数日の猶予があると思います。そこで麻酔を解いて いくつかの反応実験をしてみたいのですが。
危険ではありませんか？たとえ拘束を解かなくても何が起こるかわかりませんよ。
ようやく手に入った検体なんですもの。ただ脳を覗くだけじゃもったいないですわ。
I was like, she is not even pretending to, like, this isn't, like, so exciting for her. Takano-san's unusual cheerfulness makes me feel odd. Maybe her reaction is normal. Maybe I'm the one who's not reacting normally in this situation. I'm here only for the research, so I should be excited to have the opportunity to perform our first live dissection. But I'm still hesitant. How can I call myself a researcher? Researchers of the past were brave enough to cross the line, and that's how they accomplished many things. I've seen many brains. I've operated on them. I've lost some patients, too. But I never thought anything of it because I knew I did the right thing. Even when my hard work was denied afterwards. If it pained me to think of that, then I just needed to advance the field of medicine to ensure their deaths weren't wasted. That's the true form of those advancing the field of medicine. Yet, why was my heart tormented so much just by changing the name from treatment to dissection? Does it mean I'm not man enough to emulate those great men of the past who opened the doors to new medicine? That I don't have the power to develop new advances myself?
あら、どうなさいましたの、所
I
長。
was gonna say, no, Irie, it means that you've got morals and you've got compassion and you have, like, it's normal to have those kinds of doubts. I feel like it's less normal for Takano, who's like, I'm all in, let's dissect this person's brain while they're still alive and have no problem with it. I don't know, that's just me. I would feel very conflicted about that.
お休みのところを無理に起こしてしまったので、ご気分が優れませんのかしら。
Takano is pretending to be concerned about me, but she knows. She knows I'm still hesitating. And she's telling me I should be ashamed as a researcher for feeling that way. I shook my head to clear it of sleepiness. I guess there's a difference between researcher and doctor. Like a doctor, you want to save people and keep them alive. As a researcher, you want to find out more information about things, so if you're going by the researcher point of view, I guess it is not becoming of him to be hesitating. Remember the resolve that brought me here to this day. I already have blood on my hands, but if I stop now, their lives will be wasted. Those who shed their blood can only rest in peace once they become the cornerstones of great research. I shook my head once more and reminded myself that I'm a researcher.
いえ、考え事をしていただけです。高野さんは東京との調整をお願いいたします。日程が決まりましたら教えてください。
ええ、了解いたしましたわ。眠気も吹っ飛んでしまいますわね。
The least I can do is my best, so his life won't be wasted. If he bleeds, I can't waste even a drop of his blood. After scolding my staff for their indiscretion of discussing the dissection with such excitement, I returned to my office. Alright, so now that we've done, so the first sacrifice has already been done. Okay, so the dissection hasn't happened yet, right? It's just the plans for the dissection, so I don't know if I can do this one yet. There's also that thing about help from the Queen Carrier. I know that that's Rika, but I don't know in what aspect they mean help. Help with what? So there's some things where I feel like it's a little bit, what's the word I'm thinking? Like a little vague. Help from the Queen Carrier. The research needs to have stagnated. Instructions for kidnapping. Okay, that hasn't happened yet. Erie's reminiscence. I mean, he's been reminiscing about some stuff, so maybe that one? Consent for the collection of fluid is required. The death of Koizumi is required. Completion of the medicine. High fever. Shinto priest contacting the Erie institution. Okay, so that part hasn't happened yet. Satoko Hosho's detail. Oh, there we go. Suffering of a big brother. I think we can do this one. A group of boys are playing baseball under the powerful sun. The sound of cicadas makes the heat stand out even more, but to those boys, it's just another kind of cheering from the crowds. Of course, they go through training exercises to build stamina, but the boys don't actually like such routine activities. What they look forward to the most is the free game after practice. The school in Hinimizawa is actually borrowed from the forestry service. The schoolyard is made of gravel, so it's not very appropriate for playing sports on. Compared to that, the grounds at the school in Okonomiya are properly maintained for athletic activities, so the kids grow even more energetic when they come here. Kids from Hinimizawa really don't care if the ground is made of gravel or not. The other instructor is watching the game, so I decide to go get some drinks for the team.
監督、どこへ行くんですか？
皆さんにジュースを買ってこようと思いまして、もしよかったらサトシ君も手伝ってくださるととても助かるのですが。
はい。お手伝いします。
Satoshi couldn't decide to come along with me. Sometimes kids don't like what grown-ups choose, so I'm glad he agreed to help. Satoshi-kun and I got into the car and headed to the grocery store nearby.
監督、サトコの具合はどうなんですか？ええ、経過は良好ですよ。本当にゆっくりとですが、サトコちゃんの心の傷も癒えてきています。もう少しだけ安静にしてあげた方がいいでしょう。
It's natural for Satoshi-kun to be worried. Sadako-chan has been in the hospital for over 2 weeks. Of course, he doesn't know his sister has Hinimizawa Syndrome. Not only that, she's almost at L5. She could become deranged at any moment. He believes she's depressed because of the shock of their parents' accident. He came to the clinic every day to cheer his sister up, but Sadako-chan has become emotionally unstable and was showing some dangerous symptoms, so he called off the visits. In fact, Sadako-chan is not doing so well. L5, the stage Sadako-chan is at, is a very abnormal one. The man from last year who was at the same stage was acting so abnormal that even a drug addict in his final stages would have turned and ran. There's no guarantee Sadako-chan won't fall into the same condition. When we performed the autopsy on that man last year, we learned the true identity of the syndrome and gained a great understanding of its mechanisms. We even discovered some important facts that may lead to the development of a cure. However, we have yet to find a method of actually curing the disease. So if Sadako-chan becomes unrecoverable, we may have to dissect her just like we did the man from last year. How can I tell Satoshi-kun about his sister's situation? All I can do is make vague comments and lie to him that she's recovering. What if she becomes much worse? That would make me an unforgivable liar. The tiny bit of conscience that remains in me hurts.
もし監督の診療所のご迷惑でなければ、もうしばらく入院させてもらった方がいいかもしれません。
それはどういう意味ですか？
Oh, maybe Satoshi, in a way, he feels guilt because it's like he's probably feels better about like he doesn't have to look after her for once. I thought he wanted her to come home as soon as possible, so I'm a little surprised.
いえ、実はあまりおばさん一家とも馴染めていないんです。サトコちゃんがご両親とあまり良い関係ではなかったと聞いていましたが、新しく預けられたおばさん夫婦ともなのですか？サトコは大人にはあまり心を開かないので。
Satoshi-kun has told me about their family background. Their mother's constant remarriages wounded her children deeply. Satoshi-kun was able to overcome it, but Sadako-chan was too young to be able to do that. That left her traumatized, and now she has the tendency to distrust or dislike guardians who aren't related to her. Actually, nobody would like a guardian who isn't related to them. It's not just Sadako-chan. But usually people try to deal with that even if they don't like it. I guess Sadako-chan's not capable of that.
おじさんはあまり家に帰ってこないし、いても寝てるかテレビを見てるかなので、そんなに問題はないんですが、おばさんがものすごくサトコに絡むんです。どうしてそんなに嫌われてしまったんでしょうね。
I can guess why. Sadako-chan's parents were damn proponents, and because of that, the villagers considered the aunt and uncle part of the Hojo family and ostracized them as such. Moreover, they passed away suddenly in an accident and left 2 children behind, so I guess there would be more hate than there is gratitude. If she had been obedient like Satoshi-kun, everything would have been fine. But Sadako-chan can't be that way. She shows that in her attitude and expressions, which leads to her and her aunt having a big fight.
僕もおばさんに聡子の事情を説明してはいるのですが、なかなか分かってもらえなくて。
その度に聡子ちゃんをかばってあげるサトシ君はお兄さんの鏡だと思いますよ。今や聡子ちゃんにとって唯一の肉親はサトシ君だけなのかもしれませんからね。
そうですね。そんな気がしてます。
Satoshi-kun said with a slight hint of a sigh. He doesn't say it, but it seems Satoshi-kun has grown tired of having to cover for Sadako-chan every time she and her aunt fight. He's a good person as well as a good big brother, so I'm sure he'll do anything to cover for his sister. But that's a very exhausting thing to keep doing forever. Satoshi-kun was already doing that when their parents were alive. And eventually his mental equilibrium couldn't handle the strain, he grew sick and he visited my clinic. I thought his circumstances might have improved after their initial cause. His parents were gone. But it seems things were even worse than before.
わかりました。そんな状況で聡子ちゃんを退院させたらまた心の症状がぶり返してしまうかもしれませんね。入院費のことは気にしないでください。聡子ちゃんが本当の意味で回復するまで私が責任を持ってお預かりします。
While trying to pretend I'm listening to his request, I feel a little disgusted at myself for making such selfish excuses. I'll make sure. Takano-san is working on her dissection plan as we speak.
お願いできると僕も少しだけ助かります。
はい？
いえ、聡子がもうしばらく入院しててくれたら僕もその分気が楽だなって思っただけです。
それはどういう意味ですか？
聡子が帰ってきたらどうせまたおばと喧嘩をするだろうと思います。そうしたらまた喧嘩や怒鳴り声ばかりの日になって僕もそれに巻き込まれるのかなって思うと、聡子はずっと入院しててくれるのが一番僕にとって気楽なことなんじゃないかってそう思ってしまう自分がいて。
Yeah, that's gotta be a lot of guilt Satoshi has for even thinking that way. Maybe that's why he tried to overcorrect it with the giant bear. He's like, I want to do anything to make her happy because he feels guilty for feeling this way.
嫌になります。
サトシ君。
Satoshi-kun is a great big brother who always sticks up for his little sister. But that doesn't mean he doesn't feel burdened.
そんなことを考えてしまうなんて僕はなんて悪い兄なんだろうって思います。そうだと思えば思うほど自分が嫌になって。
Satoshi-kun said, sniffling once. His expression was one of anguish, as if truly feeling his own sin. His desire to be a model big brother is putting himself under greater pressure. I feel bad for Sadako-chan, but I also feel bad for Satoshi-kun in a different way. As someone who knows both of them very well, I feel that I must be their ally since they don't have anyone else who cares about them. This is definitely when it's starting to seed even more, like, what's the word I'm thinking of, like, doubt in him that dissecting her is the right thing to do. Okay, so with that, there is something that I feel like I can go back and do with the thing about not being able to visit. Okay. Erie's decision, detail test results. Okay. So I don't think he's made the decision yet. Oishiro-sama... Which one was it? Which one was it? That I feel like... where is it? Okay. I think this is the one. Satoshi Hojo must not be allowed to visit his sister at the clinic. Satoshi's sense of responsibility as big brother is required. I think, hopefully, can we do this one? Can we? Ah, shoot! I was doing so well! Man, darn it. No! No! Darn it! I was doing so well. Okay, how many did I do before I lost it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I did 14 of them before I screwed up. Darn it. Okay. Well, let's go into the... Let's see if I'm right. I mean, since I've already screwed it up, let's see about this. There was the one about the Queen Carrier. Help from the Queen Carrier is required. So let's try this one, because we know that dissection is required. The dissection has happened, right? I believe? Now I'm doubting myself here. Let's just try it. Duh! Damn it, now I'm screwing it up. Now I'm stuck. So are these ones like I can't... I hope I can go back and do these ones once I get the, you know, the fragments that I need. Okay, so I'm gonna take some time and really read these through and make sure that I get it right. Guess that hasn't happened. I don't understand. I don't understand the thing about the Queen Carrier. Like, help. What does that mean, the help? Research has stagnated. A bat to beat her to death is required. Okay, let's try this one. Can we do this one? Yes. Okay, there we go. Darn it. I've wanted to become a doctor ever since I was little. Doctors make a lot of money. People look up to doctors. I think those are the kinds of reasons I had. So when I played with my friends, I always acted like the doctor. I cleaned their wounds and applied ice packs while my friends sprained their ankles using what I learned from household medical books. Everyone, including me, believed I'd be a doctor one day. My family was poor, so they praised me for that goal. They told me I needed to study a lot to become a doctor, so they borrowed some pseudo-medical books from the local library for me. The rental fees weren't cheap, so I would speed read one book in a day, and the next day my parents would go back to the store and exchange it for a different book, saying they accidentally borrowed a book they already borrowed before. By doing so, my parents borrowed 2 books for the price of 1. Of course, now I know those books were rather useless, but they were highly motivational just the same. My neighbors called me Dr. Kiyosuke-kun, and I was always picked for class health officer at school. Even my teachers helped me with the classes I needed to take to become a doctor. Of course, in reality, becoming a doctor isn't as easy as it might seem. I had to study diligently, and the path was most definitely rough. To become a doctor, one must attend college. Since my family was poor, I was told I wasn't allowed to go to an expensive private school, so I had to be admitted to a national public university. My grades weren't bad, but the admission rate to national public universities is very marginal. Especially since I wanted to go to a medical school, my chances were even smaller. I studied like crazy. My only driving force was my childhood dream of becoming a doctor. The dream of becoming a doctor and to be looked up by everyone kept me going. And I was admitted. I wasn't at the top of the list, but I made it in. I was finally at the starting point of making my childhood dream come true. My parents were thrilled. Neither my father nor mother went to college, so they were proud of their son getting into a public medical school. They invited our relatives over to celebrate. Although it was a public university, tuition wasn't cheap, but they still had an extravagant celebration anyway. My father didn't express his emotions much. He always kept a straight face. He rarely voiced his opinion or took initiative on anything. My mother took care of everything, and he showed up last and left without saying a word. He was the typical stern and silent Japanese father at the time. That's why I was surprised to see him shedding tears of joy, and I cried along with him. He went around to all my relatives while repeatedly slapping my back, saying how proud and lucky he was to have a son like me. He bragged about my achievements to all who would hear him. The celebration became my farewell party as I was about to leave for Tokyo. My father yelled "Banzai" repeatedly at the station as the train pulled away. I was a little embarrassed, but when I could no longer see my father, I could clearly recall the tears pouring down. The days of hellish studying and exams began after that. Some days I was tempted to just give up and submit myself to the lavish lifestyle of the city, but the letters from my family always encouraged me and gave me the strength to go on. My dream, then, was to open up my own clinic in my hometown so I could contribute to the region. I never even dreamed of getting involved with brains. One day, I noticed a difference in a letter from my family. The letter said the usual things about how it was at home and asked how I was doing. But the postscript was what caught my attention. Oh, something happened to maybe his dad, I'm guessing, maybe has some sort of something with his brain. Oh, your father has become really violent lately. Sometimes he turns the house upside down and I just don't know what to do. I just couldn't picture him acting viciously. I was extremely surprised. And that's what got him into lobotomies and everything, is he wanted to change people's, their violent tendencies because of his father. Okay. Did something happen? But in the postscript, my mother said there was nothing she could think of. My mother and father had been together for a long time. They'd been together since well before I was born. So she noticed things I couldn't. She couldn't even think of a reason why my father had become so violent. What happened? They got along so well. They were such a lovely couple. When I caused a problem for my mother when I was little, my father only bonked my head with his knuckle. Why was he acting this way towards my mother? Maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding between them. I was going home for the new year. Maybe I could have a good talk with him then. That is so scary to me, is just the idea of, like, if, either through growing older, or if you hit your head and you can develop some sort of brain trauma that just completely changes your personality. Like, that's so scary. But the situation was a lot more serious than I thought. On one cold winter day, I found my apartment door unlocked. I thought someone had broken in, but I found my mother in my apartment with her luggage. That's right. My mother could no longer take my father's fury and came to stay with me. This was back when people still believed in the proverb, a woman has no place to settle down all her life. She couldn't go back to her own family because they lived in the same region as my father, so she came all the way to Tokyo. I heard about my father's violence from my mother's own lips. She cried, saying she had no idea why such a quiet man changed like that. She said she wasn't ever going back to him. I didn't even know what to do. I asked her if she could talk to him one more time, but the bruises on her body told me it was no use. To remember what happened afterwards is too much, so I'll be brief. After my mother left, my father thought she was having an affair and went over to the neighbor's house with a wooden sword. He was arrested. He was released immediately, but he assumed someone in the neighborhood was hiding her, so he did the same thing repeatedly. He eventually reached the point of getting into fights with anyone he saw. In the end, he picked a fight with some young punks and ended up being beaten to death. Jeez. My relatives gave my father a decent funeral, but my mother didn't attend. It's no use beating a dead horse. So nobody said anything negative about my father, but everyone was simply puzzled as to why he changed so much. What I heard from my relatives about my father's final days was a lot stranger than what I heard from my mother. My mother only told me about his sudden rage and violence. But my relatives told me he also laughed and grew sad. Apparently he displayed several sudden fluctuations of emotion, especially so in his last years. They also told me he started to complain about headaches after an accident he had. My father was a construction worker. He had hit his head hard on a construction board during an accident where... See, this stuff terrifies me not only for myself, but for my husband, because he works, not construction, but he works a physical job, and he's just like, not quite to this, not like that strong silent type, like he's a very sweet and gentle person, and the idea of something like this might happen to him, he might have an accident at work and hit his head, and he might become violent, and that's really scary. He regained his consciousness quickly and seemed fine. But since the accident, he started to have headaches and behave abnormally. I sensed the connection between the accident and my father's changes, so I talked to my professor after I went back to Tokyo.
断言はできませんが、その様子から入江君のお父さんに何らかの異常が起こっていた可能性は否めません。その事故の際に脳が傷つき、精神的な変化を起こしたのかもしれませんね。お父さんの晩年の言動からは、そんな患者さんに多く見られるいくつかの症状が伺えます。
Human behavior is created by the brain, and if the brain is damaged, it can cause erratic behavior. In other words, my father wasn't crazy. He was suffering from a disorder.
お父さんの遺体を検視できるなら、脳をよく調べてみるといいでしょう。 ひょっとすると腫瘍のようなものが見つかるかもしれません。
My father had already been cremated, so there was no way of knowing. But hearing about his behavior, I knew for sure. That was the only way to explain why such a quiet and gentle man would change. I tried to explain all this to my relatives to regain my father's honor, but hardly anyone understood. If his brain was damaged, he would have been dead. But he was alive and well. So the accident didn't damage his brain. It wasn't his brain that caused him to change, it was his mind. They simply brushed it off like that. This is the perception most people have about the brain. They don't realize the mind and the brain are connected. Most of the relatives didn't believe me, but there was one person who I really wanted to anyway. That was my mother. As she got older, she grew senile and she exaggerated the abuse she had to endure. All she did was criticize my father, and every time she ended up crying, lamenting that she married him. They were a lovely couple. We were a great family. That's why I wanted to convey to her she was misunderstanding the situation with my father. My father's behavior was caused by his brain damage. What he did to her was very sad, but he didn't want it to be that way. I told her he wasn't at fault. But my mother didn't understand. Before she took her last breaths, I begged her to forgive my father. But her final words were, "Please don't bury me next to that man." My father wasn't at fault. He was simply the victim of a brain disorder. You don't complain to a person who's coughing because he has a cold, because coughing is just a symptom and he should be sympathized with. In my father's case, the symptoms weren't as obvious as a cough. They took the form of changes in personality which are much harder to recognize. If I'd studied the brain more, I could have explained it better to my mother so she could have understood him. Then they could have been a nice couple again in heaven. When I realized that, I cried. And I also realized that there were plenty of people like my father in this world who are suffering from a disorder, yet they are misunderstood and despised for it. And then I found out. I found out about a miraculous cure for such disorders called a lobotomy. Ever since that day, I spent my days learning about the brain so I could help people who are suffering from mental illnesses. My father is gone, but if he was still alive, I could cure him myself, so he and my mother could reconcile. That's the main reason why I am here. That's very interesting. I still don't agree with lobotomies. I understand he's coming from it, from a good place. But, I don't know, it still puts me off. Maybe I can go back now and do one of the ones that's shattered. I still don't understand this help from the Queen Carrier. I don't know what that is. Okay, the Shinto priest. Okay, that one didn't happen yet. I don't think we've done the part-time job. Oh boy. Okay, the Faraday couple, that hasn't happened yet. Red capsule. Oh, I am stuck, and then it's all the stuff with the fragments, so I'm not gonna get that yet. Okay, maybe let's try... I'll try clicking one of the ones that's already broken, maybe? Nope. Okay. I'll just try all the busted ones and see if any of those pop up. Nope. Okay. Alright, I was doing so well, and then I'm hitting a wall here. Research needs to have stagnated. I don't think the instructions for the kidnapping operation have happened yet. But there's that Queen's Assistance. I'm like, that one, it connects so many things. I'm gonna just try that one and see. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Alright, it worked. Cool. I'm not gonna complain. I don't remember anything about the grandson's kidnapping thing, but cool. Okay, that very night. So this is good. This is requiring assistance from the queen. Once I have this, a lot of things will open up. The head of the Faraday family, the priest, gathered his wife and Rika together for a family meeting. In Hinimizawa, it was tradition for the three families to gather and discuss the village's issues. So it was hardly unusual for big families like the Sonozaki family and the Kimiyoshi family to have meetings beforehand to sort out opinions among themselves. However, the Faraday family had lost its branch family, so there was only 3 of them left. So until that day, they had never had a family meeting at all.
どうしたんですか、改まって。ひょっとしてダムに関わるお話ですか？
The dam was the most important issue in the village at the moment. The wife naturally assumed the priest wanted to talk about the dam. For him to gather all of them together like that, it must be a huge decision he had to make. Perhaps he was going to talk about joining the pro-evacuation camp.
いや、ダムの話ではない。だが、この村に関わる、いや、この村のご先祖様たちにも関わる、とても大事な問題だ。
The Faraday family had served in the priesthood of Oyashiro-sama, the guardian deity of the village, for centuries, or generations. So for him, the head of the family, to start out that way, it must be something extremely important. Yet, he said it wasn't about the dam, so what could he want to talk about?
私は入り婿だ。だから、古出家の本当の血を受け継ぐお前とリカには、よく聞いてほしい。お前たちは、普通の人間ではないのだ。
僕はお社様の生まれ変わりなのですよ。
リカ、そういうのは口にしてはいけません。あなた、そういう話はリカのいないところでしましょう。それでなくっても、集会所のお年寄りたちがリカに妙なことばかり吹き込んで。
その、お社様の生まれ変わりというのが、どうも、本当らしいのだ。
は？
少し長い話になる。2人ともしばらく黙って私の話を聞きなさい。
The wife had a dumbfounded expression on her face, not knowing what he was going to say, but Rika was completely relaxed, wearing her usual carefree expression. The priest started to talk after his wife calmed down.
この村には大昔からある病気があるのだ。それはこの地にだけある特別な病気。それにはこの村に住む者が全員かかっている。今この村に住んでいる者だけではない。大昔から住んでいたご先祖様たちもみんなずっとこの病気にかかってきたのだ。
そんな。だって私たちはみんな普通に生活していますよ。この村だけの病気なんて聞いたこともない。
落ち着きなさい。その病気はな、この村にいる限り何も問題はないのだ。
I wonder where the dad heard this from.
だがこの村を出て遠くの地へ行くと発病してしまう。
He knows a lot about it.
わかるか？
わかるわけないでしょ。何のことだかさっぱり。
お社様のたたりと同じなのです。
Rika said it so calmly while her mother became frustrated.
そうだ。この村から離れるとたたりがあるのと同じなのだ。つまりお社様のたたりだとご先祖様たちが代々恐れてきたのはこの村だけにしかない風土病のせいだったのだ。
そんなことあるわけないです。だって私たちだって時には村を離れることもあるじゃないですか。村の人だって仕事で遠くへ出かける人だっているし、海外に出かける人だって。
うん、それは長い時間を経て病気が徐々に弱まってきたかららしい。だからこのままさらに長い時間をかければ消えてなくなってしまうものだったのだ。だがそれがダム戦争のせいでおかしくなったらしい。ダム戦争で今村中が熱に浮かされたように興奮している状態にあるのはみんなも分かっているだろう。そういう興奮状態や情緒不安定な状態はこの病気を悪化させてしまうらしいのだ。
よく話が分かりませんけど、つまりこの大昔からたたりだと呼んできたものは全てその病気の仕業だとおっしゃるんですね。
そうだ。お社様の作った決まりは全てこの病気から村人を守るための決まりだったのだ。
そんな。それじゃお社様は 神様ではなく病気が正体なんですか？そんなことを古出家代々のご先祖様たちに説明できますか？
落ち着きなさい。お社様の信仰は変わらない。お社様がひなみ沢を見守ってくださることに何の変わりもない。お社様のたたりを再現する病気がこの村には大昔からあったということ。
そんなのは認められません。そんなこと亡くなった先代や先々代に説明できますか？古出家数百年の伝統に対する、いえお社様に対する冒涜です。そんなことをあなたに吹き込んだのは誰ですか？
That's what I want to know too.
失礼極まりない。
I mean, when you think about it, it can only be certain people, right? Like people who know about the disease. It's going to be Irie or Takano.
大地、そんな変な病気が実在するという証拠があるんですか？
ある。
それはどんな？誰が？
厚生省と国立感染症予防研究所の方からだ。病原体もすでに特定され、現在治療方法などを研究している最中だという。先週実際にその資料や標本などを見せてもらった。
Okay, so they're telling, like they're trying to keep all this stuff a secret, but they're letting Rika's dad know about it. Okay.
厚生省の方はこの病気をひなみ沢症候群と呼んでいるらしい。
そんな。
ひなみ沢症候群は普通に生活している分には何も影響のない無害なものらしい。だがひなみ沢を遠く離れたり、精神や情緒が不安定になったりすると発病しやすくなるという。発病すると妄想などに取りつかれ、最悪の場合異常行動に出ることもあるらしい。この病気は戦争中に発見されたんだそうだ。戦地でひなみ沢の兵隊だけ異常な病気を起こすことがあるのに、偉い学者の先生が気がついて研究がずっと進められてきたんだという。
A little bit of a side note, but it makes me happy to hear that Takano's father or grandfather is being referred to as a distinguished scholar instead of like a nut job like they made him out to be.
その辺の話はだいぶ詳しくしてもらったんだが、難しい内容だったので私の口からはこれ以上うまく説明できん。もし私の説明では納得できんというなら、お前も直接話を聞いてみればいい。私だって最初は何をバカなことを、お社様を冒涜する気かと憤慨していたのだから。その病気を研究するために入江診療所が作られたというんだ。あそこは表向きはただの診療所ということになっているが、実際は病気を調べるための隠し研究所らしい。
Yeah, there had to be a reason why they let Rika's father know about all this. Just, despite the fact they're trying to keep it a secret. I'm guessing because they need Rika. Oh, help from the carrier, right? They want to let him know about it because they want Rika. They need Rika for the research. That makes sense. And there was a whole thing about when Takano was talking about how Rika was like, they needed to stay on her good side because she was invaluable for their research.
秘密で研究しているなんてうさんくさいじゃないですか。それも厚生省がやっていることなら堂々とやればいいじゃないですか。
いや、そうはいかんらしい。この病気の実態を把握しないまま存在するという事実だけが不十分な知識で広まってしまったら、病気を持っている人たちはもちろんひなみ沢の人間は皆怪しげな病気にかかっていて、そのせいでとんでもないことをするかもしれないなどという噂が日本中に知れ渡ったら大変だ。厚生省もそのことを心配していて、この病気については厳重に伏せた上で治療を目指すらしい。勘違いするな。私たちを見せ物にするというんじゃないぞ。この病気を根絶させ、この村を病気から解放しようとしているのだ。自給自足ができていた大昔ならともかく、現代では村から一歩も出ずに生活など成り立たん。村から出るだけで発病するかもしれない病気など、村人にとってどれほど危険なものかわかるだろ。繰り返しになるが、昨今反ダム戦争で村全体が強い興奮状態にあって、ひなみ沢症候群にとって非常に良くない状態にあるらしい。
It almost feels like Rika's dad is like just an exposition dump. It's like we know all this information, but he's still like giving this all to us point by point.
も もし村人がおかしくなって大変なことをしたら、きっとマスコミがパシャパシャでいっぱいなのです。
そうだ。そうなったからでは手遅れなのだ。
そんないきなり言われても信用できませんわ。本当に相手は国の人？変な詐欺に騙されてるんじゃないですか？
信用できんのも無理はない。先方は研究所はいつでも見に来ていいと言っている。私はもう見せてもらっているが、あれは詐欺とかそういうレベルではない。ゴングラの大病院でもあんな大掛かりな設備はないぞ。お前も私の話に納得できないなら、研究所で詳しい話を聞かせてもらうといい。私よりもっと詳しく説明してくれるだろう。向こうは研究所の説明でも納得できないなら、東京の国立研究所で説明してもいいし、厚生省の本庁舎で直接説明してもいいと言っている。
でも信じる信じないは別にして、それが私たちにどういう関係があるんです？
古出家は代々お社様の血を受け継ぐと言われている。そして8代続いて女子が生まれれば、その8代目はお社様の生まれ変わりであるとも。
Yeah, that's why they're so insistent on making sure that the family believes them, is because they need parental consent to be able to have Rika be tested on, I'm guessing.
そうですわ。私が7代目、リカが8代目。でもそれとその病気に何の関係があるというんです？
このひなみざわ症候群という病気はある種の寄生虫によるらしい。虫といってもものすごく小さい。人の目には決して見えんくらいに。その虫たちには親分格がいるというのだ。
まさかそれがフルデ家だとおっしゃるんですか？
その親分格の寄生虫は代々フルデ家の直系だけに受け継がれるらしい。つまり先代はお前、今はリカだ。
バカバカしい。そんな話やっぱりおかしいですわ。大体ですね、寄生虫なんてそんな気持ち悪いもの。
だから落ち着きなさい。私では説明が下手だ。専門の人に説明を受けなさい。そして彼らが言うには、この病気の治療を研究するためには親分格の研究が不可欠だというのだ。
嫌です。そんな怪しげな研究まっぴらごめんですし、リカだってそんな研究には関わらせません。
だから落ち着きなさいというのに。彼らの研究ではひなみざわ症候群は村から離れると発病するのではなく、お前も小さかった頃、村人から陣痛力があると言われていたことがあるだろ。遠方に出かけ片頭痛などにかかったお年寄りがお前に払ってもらうとたちまち頭痛が消えたという陣痛力。それこそが親分格の証拠でもあるというのだ。フルデの血には発病者を救う力がある。それを研究するのは治療薬を見つけるためにもとても重要なことなのだそうだ。
僕を研究すると村のみんなが助かるのですか？
I wonder if maybe that's another reason other than the medication that Sadako took, is because she was so close to Rika a lot. Maybe that kind of staved off her, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking out my ass, but maybe that staved off the parasite a little bit because she was always in proximity to Rika, at least after her parents died. But the medication certainly doesn't hurt either.
先方はそう言っている。
その病気は村の全員がかかっているのですか？僕もみんなもサトコも？
村に住む人間全員だけでなく、沖宮に住む親類なども全て含むそうだ。多分何千人という規模になるだろう。それだけの大変な病気だから、厚生省がわざわざたくさんの予算を投じて専門の研究所を作ってくれたのだ。
私は反対です。リカもそんな怪しげな研究の生贄にするだなんて。
僕はいいのですよ。僕が生贄でサトコが助かるなら全然平気なのです。
リカは黙っていなさい。とにかく 絶対反対です。あなたにそんな妙なことを吹き込んだ人たちには私が直接会ってはっきりとお断りをします。リカを変な実験で殺されてたまるものですか。大体リカはフルデ家のたった一人の後継ぎなんですよ。もしものことがあればフルデの血はここで絶えてしまうかもしれないじゃないですか。あなたはもっとですね、フルデの家のことを考えていただかないと。そんなだから村の人たちに日和見主義とかなんとか言われて。
There's the thing about the opportunists. There we go. That opened that up right there.
大体おかしいじゃないですか。建設省は村をダムに沈める、厚生省は村の病気を治す。何が何だかさっぱりわからないです。
厚生省はこの病気は環境の変化で大変発病しやすいと警告していて、建設庁に対しダム計画を中止するよう働きかけてくれているそうだ。だからお前も研究所を見せてもらいなさい。あれだけの大設備をダム湖に沈むかもしれない土地に建てるわけがない。
Rika let out a big yawn. It was long past bedtime for a little girl like her.
僕はもう寝ますです。父さん、僕はいつでも協力するとその人たちに言っておいてくださいなのです。
リカ、そんなことお母さんに断りなく勝手に決めちゃいけません。リカ、待ちなさい、リカ。
Alright. Now I'm back on track again. I was a little stuck there, but now I feel like I know what to do. So we've got the help from the Queen Carriers that opens up. There we go. Help from Queen Carrier is required. So there was that one, but there was the other one I'm thinking about where it talked about the thing about the opportunist. The father being the opportunist. So let me see. Okay, I guess it was back here. I swear there was one, wasn't there? Now I feel like I'm going crazy. I was sure that there was one. Maybe it was one of the, shattered ones. And there's this one too. This one I could do, right? An L5 stage patient's dissection is required. That was the murder suspect. I can't seem to find the dang thing. Alright, we're just gonna go ahead with this one, because this one I should be able to do. I've got two I think I can do. When researching Hinimizawa Syndrome, there is something very important that needs to be discussed first. If something happens to the Queen Carrier, the village will collapse. In his article, my grandfather called it the most dangerous situation. According to my grandfather, if the Queen Carrier dies, all the infected persons will go terminal within 48 hours. This may sound unbelievable at first, but research on the collapse of past local religions and group suicides around the world should indicate that there's some truth to it. Among all the mysterious incidents around the world, there are some that were caused by parasites controlling entire communities, very similar to Hinimizawa Syndrome. Grandfather picked a few cases that are very similar to the syndrome and investigated them. As a result, he confirmed multiple cases of entire communities losing their minds after the death of a religious leader or founder and finally annihilating themselves. He stated that, on average, it happened within 48 hours. It's clear that infected people are affected by the Queen Carrier, and the condition of the Queen Carrier is, in fact, affecting the entire village. Our statistics already proved that on weeks Rika felt sick and visited the clinic, we saw an exceptionally high number of visitors. Rika being sick with a simple cold had a massive impact. If something particularly bad happened to her, we'd be facing a serious situation within 48 hours. That's why the Erie Institute has to protect Rika Furaday, the Queen Carrier. It is the most important mission of the Hinimizawa Syndrome research project. She's already agreed to help us in our research, but we have to be very careful not to put her in any danger. Also, we have to protect her from anyone who would try to harm her. Her life is equal to the lives of 2,000 villagers. But what if something happens to her by accident? The Erie Institute must prepare for that situation. That's why I worked on the draft of an emergency manual when the Erie Institute was first established. Okay, I believe I saw something too about an emergency manual being made as another one of the fragments. It's a precaution in case the queen carrier dies, or if infected people show acute symptoms due to the death of the queen carrier. This is an emergency procedure which must be followed within 48 hours of the mass occurrence of the acute symptoms. The final measure is to prevent the damage from spreading to nearby areas. The plan uses gas, making it look like a natural disaster. My client, the Alphabet Project, took the responsibility of working out the details of the plan. They are used to dealing with things like nuclear and biological weapons, so they ended up being such a big help. There's no way I could have come up with a plan on my own to execute 2,000 villagers. Through a dummy company, the ground SDF has secured a closed quarry in the Higurashi region upstream of Hinimizawa. It's to be the secret storage base for the equipment we'd use in that operation. Equipment that sprays deadly gas that kills people as if they were falling asleep is stored here. In the case of an emergency, a special unit of the ground SDF is to use this equipment to destroy the village. However, preparing for the execution of the villagers itself is politically dangerous. So if I'm going to insist on them getting the equipment ready, I have to make them understand how dangerous Hinimizawa Syndrome is, and how urgent the need is to have a contingency plan. I have to prove the need for the plan by showing them enough data. So the files my grandfather kept intact come in quite handy. When the clients read my grandfather's articles about the syndrome, they were surprised to see how catastrophic things could be in the worst-case scenario.
つまり女王である一人の少女に何かがあれば村人2000人以上が全員錯乱するということなのですね。
はい。hinamizawa症候群に極めて類似するいくつかのケースでは、集団自殺を示すものが少なくありませんが、hinamizawa症候群の場合、強い疑心暗鬼や過剰なまでの危機意識から何かの過剰防衛を行う可能性があり、被害は感染者2000人にとどまらないものと推定されます。それらは無政府状態の暴動から始まり、猟奇的なあるいは宗教的終末感にも似た異常な状況を作り出すでしょう。これに対する事前の鎮圧策を用意しなかった場合、世界の注目を浴びることは避けられません。また、その猶予は事態発生から48時間しかありません。
つまり、いざことが起こったらもう誰にも防げないということですな。
感染者全員を48時間以内に全員治療することは不可能なのかね。
無理だろう。それに治療方法すら確立していないし、研究所の規模では村人全員の救済は物理的に不可能だ。
しかしこのような恐ろしく珍しい病気があるとは世の中わからんもんですな。
常に最悪の事態に備えることは国防にも通じますし、我々アルファベットプロジェクトの理念でもあります。そして使うことが目的なのではなく、備えることそのものが肝要なのです。
確かにおっしゃる通りですな。運用規定については決済区分の強化などまだ検討したいところはありますが、最悪の事態に対応する準備が必要だということは理解できました。
都市沈黙船の研究班にhinamizawa地区沈黙船のシミュレーションをさせましょう。これは至急行われる必要があると思います。
こうしている間にも女王感染者の少女が車にはねられて死んでしまう可能性だってあるのですから。高野さんさ、ありがとう。また質問しますので着席してくださって結構です。
Thanks to a push from one of my backers, things were decided without too much of a problem. It took me almost all day to explain it to them, but it only took a short time to come to a decision. Nobody criticized, ridiculed, or tried to reject my grandfather's articles out of hand. In the files they're all reading today are the very same shameful articles those haughty authorities left their footprints on as they trampled them in my grandfather's heart. But they aren't ridiculing the articles. They're reading what was once rejected. It's nothing big at a glance, but in this moment my grandfather's research is being recognized for the first time. My heart is filled with satisfaction to see people discussing amongst each other while pointing to my grandfather's files and raising them as proof. I've worked so hard for this day. Grandpa's in heaven. Or Grandpa in heaven, can you see this? Okay, so there we go. That confirmed her grandfather is passed. So that's another fragment we can do. So now we're opening up a whole bunch. So this is good. This is good. So my thing is something must have happened because she's going now from being like, we have to protect Rika at all costs to, by the end of the chapter, she is voluntarily killing her. There has to be something that happened to make her do that. Okay, so there's one I feel like I can go back here and do. I think we can do the research is going well, I believe. Oh, this is the one right here, the third sacrifice. Rika's father being marked as an opportunist is required. Rika's mother's suspicions. God damn, it was on the first page and I skipped over it who knows how many times. Okay, let's do this one. Oh, it can't be connected yet. Oh, okay. Shoot. So much for that. Okay. Alright, let's do research is going well and see if we can do that one. Alright, cool.
フルデさん、お待たせしました。今、最後の検査を終えたところです。もうすぐ戻ってくると思います。
娘が村のために役に立てばいいのですが。
とんでもない。
Maybe this is where the mother's suspicion's gonna pop up. The mother was already pretty suspicious as it was, so I thought I had it, but...
リカさんの協力は村を救うことにもなります。おかげでようやく治療方法にも目処がついてきたところです。仕組みはまだ調べているところですが、リカさんの存在がやはり村人にとってとても大切なものであることが分かってきました。レベルの進んでしまった一般感染者は自力ではそのレベルを下げて症状を安定させるのが非常に困難です。ですが、女王感染者に接近することで脳内にある種の物質が作られることが分かっています。その物質には鎮静効果があり、また進んでしまった症状のレベルを抑え回復させる力もあるようなのです。この物質を処方できるようになれば治療の強力な決め手となるでしょう。
そうですか。リカにそのような力が。
驚かれるには値しないのでは。フルデの巫女には荒れた心、鬼を鎮める神追力があると代々伝えられているんではありませんでしたっけ。私たちが解明しなくても村の数百年にわたる歴史はすでにそれを知っていたわけですわ。
そうですね。大昔の方の聡明さは時に現代医学から見ても感心させられます。
検査が終わったのです。
リカ、大変だったな。疲れただろ。これで自動販売機でジュースを買ってきなさい。
血をいっぱい抜かれたから補給なのです。
Rika took the 100 yen coin that was offered to her and ran out into the hallway. Yeah, the mom's not there. I'm assuming she's pissed.
本当にリカさんの協力のおかげです。彼女が献身的に協力に応じてくれなければこれほどまでに研究が進むことはありませんでした。
リカは自分の友達もその病気にかかっているということを気にしていて、友達のためにも協力したいと常に言っていました。どうか先生方、リカの心意気を汲んでやってください。
もちろんです。毎週日曜日に貴重な時間を割いていただいているのです。必ずや成果にしてみせます。今後もリカさんに過酷な実験を強いることがあると思いますが、どうかお許しいただければと思います。
彼女に危害を加えることは絶
Says
対
you,
にありませんわ。
Takano, as you fucking rip out her guts.
彼女はとてもとても大切な身なのです。何しろお社様の生まれ変わりなんですから。
大昔の村人はどのようにしてこの病気のことを知り、フルデ家にその女王の血が流れていることを知ったのやら。ご先祖様たちにはつくづく頭が下がります。
それで実はまた辛いご協力をお願いしなくてはなりません。彼女の脳脊髄液の採取の
Oh, I think
ご
that's
許可を
another.
いただきたいので
I
す。
think that's another fragment.
また場合によっては彼女の頭蓋
Oh
に
boy,
閃光を
damn.
開け直接頭部の中を検査させていただくことになるかもしれません。
Are you sure, Irie, you're not just itching to do a lobotomy because you miss doing them?
頭蓋骨に穴ですか？
もちろん安全性には最大限注意します。リカさんはたった一人しかいない女王感染者なのです。間違っても危害を加えることがないよう私どもで最も安全な方法を模索した上で提案させていただいています。
もちろんリカちゃんは女の子ですもの。頭部先行周辺の頭髪には気を使いますので、ただ経過を慎重に見るためにしばらく入院をしてもらうことになりますが。
もちろんその間面会謝絶ということはありません。
Yeah, I'm sure Rika's mom's gonna be real happy about this.
検査にもぜひ立ち会ってください。お父さんが身近におられた方がリカさんも安心するでしょう。
その検査はどうしても必要なもので絶対に安全なものなのですか？
脳脊髄液の採取も頭蓋の潜行もどちらも 100% の安全を保証することはできません。
Oh god, the drilling in the hole and collecting the fluid, isn't that like a spinal tap? I've heard those things are really bad, really bad. My brother had to get a spinal tap when he was a kid because they thought he had meningitis, and it did not sound pleasant. I'm glad that didn't happen to me.
常に 1% の危険があります。またリカさんに身体的あるいは精神的苦痛を与えるでしょう。いくら重要な検査といえどもご家族の同意なしには行えません。
リカちゃんには実はもう同じ話をしていますわ。
リカはなんと？
自分は構わないと、それはもうあっけらかんと。
リカさんには危険や苦痛が伴う可能性があることをもちろん十分に説明しています。ですがやはり保護者の方の承諾をいただかないわけにはいきません。
リカは自分のことを本当にお社様の生まれ変わりだと信じている時があります。だから村人のために自分の身を捧げるのが自分の義務だと思っているところがあるのかもしれません。
立派なお子さんだと思います。
一応家内とも相談させてください。納得はしてくれているのですが、やはりことがことなので話をしないわけにもいかない。
ええ、ご家族の同意は不可欠だと思います。よくご相談なさってください。
その検査は病気の根絶のために重要な意味があるのですね。
はい。
Yes, yeah, I don't think that they're just gonna be doing that for funsies.
hinimizawa症候群のベールを剥ぐ決定的なものになるでしょう。
決定的なものの第一歩にですわね。
すでにご説明しておりますように、女王感染者に万一のことがあった場合、感染コミュニティに致命的な崩壊をもたらす危険性が予見されています。平たく申し上げると、村人全員が突如として末期発症を起こす可能性もあるということです。
ええ、急性発症の平均から見て、女王感染者死亡から48時間以内に全感染者が末期発症を起こします。それだけは絶対に防がなくてはなりません。
リカが死ぬようなことがあれば、村中が大パニックに陥って恐ろしいことに。
Once again, I think I've brought this up before, but what happens when Rika gets old and she passes away without having a daughter? Would everyone else just die off too? I don't know.
はい。それを防ぐのも私たちの
Because
役目です。
Rika's not immortal. I mean, Hanyu is, but Rika's not, so Yeah, it's like there's a ticking time bomb there. It's like whether she dies as a child by accident or she dies of old age, like what happens after that?
そのために危険を冒さなければならないのはとても皮肉なことですが、根絶のためには避けて通れない道だと思っています。
入江先生、必ずその検査を成功させていただけますか？
ですから医学には 100% や絶対などという。
ええ。
Erie answered with a nod, interrupting Takano's vague response.
私入江京介が命を懸けて必ずやリカさんを救います。村人も救います。絶対にです。
わかりました。家内と相談させてください。その上で後日改めてお返事させていただきます。
はい、よろしくお願いいたします。
Yep. After Rika and her father left, Takano started to laugh.
どうしましたか？何か愉快なことでも。
いえいえ。患者とご家族から律儀に事前承諾を取られていたのがなんだかおかしくって。
リカさんには本来無用の苦痛を強いています。それくらいは最低限の礼儀だと思いまして、去年の男も正常な状態にあれば事前承諾を取りたかったところです。
入江所長はここの研究を始められてからずっと罪の意識に苛まれているのではありません？
それはどういう意味ですか？
This type of teasing was normal from Takano, but maybe she had gone a little too far. Irie made it clear how displeased he was to hear that.
hinimizawa症候群の研究は生きた人間を研究対象とすることでのみ進められる。それが分かってなお、あなたはこの研究を進めることに罪の意識を感じている。
罪の意識は必要です。殺人であれ、解剖であれ、相手に死を強いる点で変わりません。私たちはその罪を受け止めてなお、その死を無駄にしないために最大限の努力と研究を重ねなくてはなりません。
ご高説ですわね。では入江所長、あなたはこれまで間違いなく非合法とされる実験を行う際、何度の事前承諾を取られたというんですの？
Irie didn't think Takano knew about that.
あなたの人の罪は脳の疾患によるものという独りよがりで、一体何人の患者が事前承諾なくあなたの研究対象とされてきたのかしら？
それは。
常識は時代で変わる。当時は医者が治療をいちいち説明することなどなかったし、事前承諾なんて大したものではなかった。だから当時のことは気にしなくていいんじゃないですかしら。今は倫理上問題があっても当時は問題なかった。ならばいいじゃありませんの。でもそれに罪を感じているからリカちゃんやあの男にさえも事前承諾が取りたかった？
それは誤解です。そもそも治療と解剖では患者。
ねえ坊や、
Oh.
あなたが欲しいのは事前承諾という名の免罪符。そうでしょ？あなたが欲しいのは過去の罪をあがないたいという心を満たすだけの欺瞞、そのためだけの免罪符。後悔しているならば二度と脳に関わらなければいい。なのにだらだらと後悔しながらあなたはいつまでも未練がましくこの世界で脳に関わっている。その罪の意識が本物ならあなたはあの時所長就任の話を断ればよかったはず。そうでしょう？
Just the fact she keeps calling him boy. She's probably not that much older than he is.
とても不快です。私は失礼させていた。
聞きなさい。 医学は常にその時代の倫理や価値観との戦いから勝ち取られるの。かつて高野先生がひなみ沢症候群の存在を予見した時、その時代の権威たちは自分たちの無知を棚に上げ、その先見性を嘲笑った。でも病に倒れる直前まで研究を捨てなかったわ。必ず自分がいつか評価される日が来ると信じて、そしてその日が自分の死後であったとしても必ず来ると信じて、それは強い信念と揺らぎのない鉄の意志があるから成し遂げられること。そうでなければ時代の無理解に高野先生は屈していたはず。研究はね、意志の力で成し遂げるのよ。絶対的に強固な意志だけが結果を紡ぎ出す。でもあなたにはそれがない。あなたは自分の実績を誇るべきか恥じるべきかすら自分で決めかねている臆病者よ。そんな中途半端な覚悟でよくこのような研究所の所長を引き受けられたものね。血塗られた両手をさらに血に浸すことでしか明かせぬ研究だと最初から分かっていたはずなのに。
否定はしません。
Damn, she just read him like a book.
私は中途半端かもしれない。
ならば所長を辞任なさっては。守秘義務は残るでしょうけど、あなたはこれ以上罪の意識に苛まれなくて済むでしょう。私にとってあなたはパートナーである以前にクライアントが要求した人事上の駒でしかない。こうして研究機関が成立した今、あなたの存在はもう重要ではないの。しかもその上、研究に対する覚悟が足りず、研究のパートナーとしても役立たずなら、あなたは無能の用なしよ。私は一人でも研究をやめない。どんな罪も後悔も恐れない。強固な意志だけが未来を紡ぐ。かつて高野先生が高潔な精神で成し遂げたように。
立派な決意だと思います。ですが私もあなたに及ばないにしてもわずかの決意があってここへ来ています。そしてあなたの言う通り、私の手はすでに血にまみれています。そしてひなみ沢に来てさらに血に浸しました。だからその責任を全うするまでは私は逃げることはできません。相変わらず私は罪を清算できず苛まれ続けるでしょう。でも逃げない。必ずひなみ沢症候群の研究を決着させます。それだけがこの研究に命を捧げてくださった方、そしてこれから捧げることになるかもしれない方への最後の誠意だと思っています。
Erie wore a determined look on his face. He appeared different from even a moment before when he was baffled by Takano having brought up those painful memories. For a short while, Erie's eyes displayed a strong will, and then he turned around.
おそらくリカさんの検査は承諾が取れるでしょう。準備をお願いします。
ええ、ここ所長。
They got their consent the following week. Damn, I'm surprised the mother agreed to it. I'm assuming they need consent from both parents. One parent wouldn't be enough. Yeah, it's good seeing this backstory to Erie instead of him just being like the goofy kind of pervert. Like, man, he is carrying some demons around with him. Okay. There's definitely some more we can do here. This is what I'm excited. The truth about the park accident is required. And we can finally get an answer for sure whether Satoko killed her parents or not. Okay. There we go. Prior consent for the collection of cerebrospinal fluid is required. The lights came on in the meeting room as the slideshow ended, and all the auditors began to applaud, praising the Erie Institute's dramatic accomplishments.
素晴らしい。実に素晴らしい。本音を言わせてもらえば、私はこのひなみ沢症候群の研究はあまり期待していませんでした。
仮に進むとしても 10年単位で3歩進んで2歩下がるような研究になると思っていました。
いやいや、それが短期間の間にこれだけの成果を上げられるとは。入江所長の努力と指導の賜物です。
そんなことはありません。私を支えてくださる優秀なスタッフとそちらの高野さんのおかげです。
ご謙遜を。やはり脳に関しては入江所長は天才ですわ。何しろ脳に関しては誰も及ばない実績をお持ちなのですから。
It's weird seeing them be so nice to each other after what just happened, where she called him a boy and said he was a coward.
そうですな。あなたと同じ年の医者で、あなたほど大勢の脳みそをご覧になってきた方はおりますまい。
おめでとうございます、イリエニさん。私もこれで東京に胸を張って報告に帰れます。
That outfit on Tomatake drives me crazy. I'm like, it looks like he took his father's jacket, which is 5 times too big, and is just like playing dress up. It's like, dude, get that fitted. Come on.
富武さんに良いお土産が持たせられて光栄です。あと、ニサというのはご勘弁を。どうしても馴染めませんので。というか、リサさんって聞こえるんですよね。
まるで女性の名前みたいに聞こえますね。
でも二郎さんも影の立役者ですわね。なかなか成果の出せない私たちの予算を二郎さんが懸命に努力して維持してくださったおかげですわ。
いやでも今回の成果は劇的です。hinimizawa症候群の病原体を特定し、今後の研究計画に具体的道筋をつけることができました。以後の進捗監査がとても楽しみになります。
I'm sure the Tokyo office will quit bothering us about cutting your budget with these sorts of results.
何しろ皆さんにお出ししている缶コーヒーの予算まで削られそうになったんですものね。
富武君、東京にしっかり報告して祝杯が挙げられるくらいの予算はつけるよう愚信してあげなさい。
無知ばっかりではいかんね。飴もないとね。
その飴は予算で還元していただけると一番嬉しいのですが。
And with that congenial atmosphere, our routine audit was over. Erie was surrounded and being questioned by National Institute of Infectious Diseases workers who had joined the auditors.
高野さん、おめでとう。みんなの前では言えないけれど、今日の成果は全て高野さんの積み重ねによるものだよ。
ありがとう、二郎さん。
Jiro-san and I are the only ones here who know the strings were pulled in order to create the institute. So only Jiro-san can understand what I had to go through.
でもこれでようやく研究の舞台に立てたというところね。私の挑むべき相手がようやく同じ土俵に上がってくれただけ。正念場はこれからよ。そしてここからが最も楽しいところになりそうだけど。
それでね、今回の件で中川本部長の方からぜひ東京で報告会をしてほしいと伝言をことづかってるんだ。アルファベットの理事会もぜひ君と会合を設けたいって言ってたよ。みんな君に直接話を聞いてみたいようだね。
あらあら、二郎さんを経由した報告じゃ物足りないのかしら。
いやあそういう意味じゃないとは思うけどな。きっと噂の美人研究員を直接見てみたいんじゃないかななんて。
あら嫌だ、二郎さんったら。
失礼します。高野さんさ、東京からお電話です。
お待たせしました。高野です。
おお、元気にやってるかの。
小泉先生、 わざわざお電話をいただけるなんてとても恐縮でございます。
Oh wait, no, it wasn't the grandfather, it was Koizumi sensei that said the death of Koizumi sensei for the fragment, not the grandfather derp.
いやな、ミオちゃんの研究が大金星を上げたという話が来てな、お祝いを言おうと思って電話したんだ。
ありがとうございます。はい。おかげさまで研究の第一段階であり、最大の目標でもあったhinimizawa症候群の病原体特定に成功しました。
そうかそうか。ついにやったな、ミオちゃん。天国で高野くんもきっと大喜びしているだろうの。
まだまだですわ。祖父はhinimizawa症候群の病原体特定などという段階を超えて研究していました。人の思想や意志が実は人以外の寄生的存在によって支配されていた可能性。それを暴いて初めて祖父の研究は偉業と称えられるのです。世界中の思想や宗教が全て寄生虫で説明できたなら世界はひっくり返るくらいの大騒ぎになるでしょうね。
それは愉快だの。偉そうに振る舞っとる宗教家連中が単なる寄生虫の親玉に過ぎんと立証されたら、それは本当に愉快だろうの。ぜひそんな愉快なのを見せてくれ。ミオちゃんがそれを見せてくれるまで私は天国のお迎えを断り続けてるからな。
And then he died based on the fragments.
縁起でもありませんわ。でも楽しみにしていてくださいね。きっと世界中があっと驚く発表をしてみせますから。その時に初めて世界中が祖父の偉業を知り、祖父が残した資料を奪い合って読み合うことになるでしょう。そこまで至って私はようやく祖父への恩返しを終えるのです。
高野くんが羨ましいの。私はな、金なんかこんなにいらんかった。この半分は捨ててもいい。あんたみたいな自分の志を継いでくれる孫が一人いてくれたらと思うよ。
ありがとうございます。身に余るお言葉です。
あとな、小泉のおじいちゃんからのプレゼントだ。みおちゃん宛てにな、祝杯用のワインを一本送らせた。みおちゃんの家の住所がわからんかったから診療所宛てにしてある。取り寄せに手間がかかってるらしいからちょっと時間がかかるかもしれんが、届いたらみおちゃんの研究を手伝ってくれた人たちを集めてそれを振る舞ってあげなさい。
祝杯用にワインなんて。はてさて、小泉先生からどんな高級ワインが届くやら。
そんな高級酒と違う。みおちゃんも覚えとらんかね。高野くんがいつも一本のワインを大切にしておったの。
I remember. That's right, my grandfather kept a certain bottle of wine. I don't know if he bought it himself or if someone gave it to him. But he treasured it, and he always said he'd open it when his research finally gained recognition. I was a child then, so I don't even remember what brand it was, but Mr. Koizumi would know. He went through all the trouble to find the same bottle of wine for this special occasion. For the first time in a while, Takano felt the same sunny warmth she experienced during her time with her grandfather.
ありがとうございます、小泉のおじいちゃん。
やっぱりみおちゃんにはそう呼ばれた方がしっくりくるの。どうもみおちゃんに先生と言われても自分のことだと思えなくてな。
I can't help but smile along with him, because I think Tomotaki and Irie were just having a similar exchange.
そう呼ばれる方がお好きでしたら、人前以外ではそう呼んでも結構ですわよ。
できれば人前でもそう呼んでもらえると喜ぶんだがの。
I don't know exactly how old he is, but if he can laugh so energetically, he'll live for many more years to come. I guess the saying about living a long life is true after all. Well, I don't think that's the case.
私も高野くんもみおちゃんのような子が本当の家族だったらと思うよ。本当にな。
My grandfather had his own family, of course, but because he was so into his research, he became estranged from his wife. They were legally married, but they lived separately. I never met his family when I was a child. I only met them after my grandfather committed suicide. Oh, jeez. He committed suicide? Oh, that just... Oh, it tore up my heart. I was already sad enough when, he cried after his research was trampled on, but That just really just drives the knife in. Oof. During his latter years, my grandfather went into psychological despair and began to look at his life with cynicism. His condition became worse over time, and he was shocked at his own dementia. He was afraid of living while his consciousness degraded, so he jumped off the rooftop of the hospital. Only my name was in his suicide note. None of his family members' names were in it. That's when all his relatives showed up and took everything my grandfather left behind. They were afraid I was going to get his estate. They had lawyers and all that, so I backed down. I asked for everything in his study in return. Those idiots don't understand the value of my grandfather's research. They were actually happy to strike a deal out of court, and they could also get rid of the piles and papers and jars with human organs in them. They never even showed up once he was alive, yet like hyenas, they appeared after his death. I'd never let them put their hands all over my grandfather's research. Fortunately, I was able to protect my grandfather's soul from their tainted hands.
それでは長くなると悪いから困ったことがあったらいつでもおじいちゃんに頼りなさい。孫娘のためにいくらでも一肌脱ぐからの。
ありがとう。小泉のおじいちゃん、ミオはもっともっと頑張りますね。
Alright, the death of Koizumi-sensei, which has not happened yet. But we know it's coming. Oh, bottle of wine for toast is required. Jiro Tomatake's promise is required. The draft of an emergency manual is required. Okay, so we've got the draft. The bottle is coming. I don't know if the bottle is technically there yet, but I don't think we've got the promise, whatever this promise is. Okay, now I'm a little stuck again. We'll find it, though. We'll find it. You know what? Let's just try the roll of a 1. Let's see if we got it. No, it can't be connected yet. Okay. Darn it. Okay, let's try the third sacrifice again. Nope. The mother's suspicion apparently hasn't come up yet. Okay, let's try the dose experiment. Now I'm just picking random things. Here we go. Plans for Sadako-chan's dissection are moving right along. I don't want Satoshi-kun to be sad. I feel pity for Sadako-chan and her harsh circumstances. I'm still struggling with how much I have to sacrifice for the sake of research.
Irie?
え？ああ、すみません。どうなさいましたか、リカさん。
僕の友達がずっと長く入院していますが、その子はひなみざわ症候群ではないのですか？
それを誰に聞きましたか？
僕がそう思っただけです。どうなのですか？入江、聡子はひなみざわ症候群ではないのですか？
Rika-chan is on our side. Is that why the dissection plan wasn't because he's like, oh, if we dissect Satoko, we're gonna lose Rika's support. There's nothing I have to hide from her. Actually, I probably shouldn't keep anything from her.
はい。両親との不仲と、その両親の突然の死、彼女の心には、それは一度に受け入れるには、あまりに大きすぎる出来事でした。それが引き金になったのかもしれません。
検査の結果は？
レベル5です。上辺は非常に安定して見えますが、情緒は非常に不安定です。先日からサトシ君の見舞いも謝絶にしました。
サトシに聞きましたです。聡子の心の傷がなかなか癒えないと気にしていましたです。入江、 サトコはどうなるのですか？
Satoko-chan is Rika-chan's best friend. How can I tell her we're planning to dissect Satoko-chan? However, even if I don't say anything, she already knows that Satoko-chan's situation is extremely poor.
イリエは僕の体を調べてたくさんのことが分かったのではないですか？
ええ、それはもちろんです。症状を抑える効果が期待される試薬も現在いろいろと試しているところです。
それをサトコに与えることはできませんのですか？
一度は考えました。しかしかなり危険です。体力や精神力に余裕がある検体に試し、少しずつデータを集めていこうという段階です。サトコちゃんのようなもう後がない人間に試せるような代物ではありません。
ではイリエ、その薬を試さないならサトコはどうなってしまうのですか？
She spoke as if aware of our plans for Satoko-chan. No, she must actually know. I've told her about most of my research. She's more mature than she looks, so it would be easy for her to figure out.
僕はサトコが 1% でも助かる可能性があるならそれにかけるべきだと思いますです。
非常に危険な賭けです。最悪の場合、彼女は即座に末期発症し錯乱するか、さもなければ人としての心を失い、一生を焦点の合わない目で壁を見て過ごす体になってしまうかもしれない。どちらもそれはあまりに過酷な運命です。
全身麻酔で痛みを感じさせずに眠っイリエ、よく高野が言う通り医学に 100% はない。でもこのまま放置すればサトコを待ち受ける運命は 100% の絶対の死しかない。ならばどちらにかけるかは明白なはず。
そうですね。その通りです。
But I know too well. C103, the medicine that's being tested, may not even be something that can be used. It may not even have a 1% chance of success. Worse, I can't even imagine what kind of tragic end she'd meet if her body rejects the medicine. That's why I'm tempted to believe it would be far more merciful to feed her favorite food, let her gently fall asleep, and after that dissect her while she dreams. I don't want to admit it, but Takano-san is right. I'm being indecisive and showing a lack of resolve. How effective could the medicine made by someone like that really be? So because it was medicine I created myself, I couldn't even believe there might be a 0.1 chance of success.
僕はイリエの作った薬なら信用できると思いますです。
She spoke as if she read my mind. Surprised, I raised my head up to look at her, and found her giving me a reassuring look I never would have imagined someone her age capable of.
イリエは人の命を左右するとても辛い仕事に耐えている。本来人の生き死になど人間がどうにかしようというのがおこがましいこと。その重圧は背負った者にしかわからない。
Her voice hasn't changed, but I feel like Rika-chan is admonishing me, almost as if she knows what it's like to be responsible for human lives.
その重さは罪の意識と後悔の重さを加えて決められる。だからイリエはまだまだ危険な薬をサトコに試せない。そうでしょ。
Takano-san said the same thing when she criticized me earlier. I'm being criticized again.
でもだからあなたにならサトコを託せると思う。
え？
人の命はとても重い。その重みに耐えかねるのはあなたが人の命を大切にしたい心があるからこそよ。そんな心がなくしてどうして人を病気から救えるというの？高野みたいに人をモルモットとしか思ってないやつの治療薬なんか試せると思う？
I shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it. I felt like I should laugh.
高野とあなたがそれぞれに薬を差し出したなら、私は入江の薬の方が治るように思う。だって薬は人の心から生み出されるんだもの。自分の身から滴り落ちる雫で人を救いたいという気持ちが人の病を癒してくれる。
おっしゃる通りです。医者が薬のことで諭されるとは。
私は自分の体を他でもない聡子のために差し出した。私の体から注射針で抜き出したものは全て私から聡子に捧げる薬の雫。その雫から命の本当の重さを知り、日々後悔と自責を忘れないあなたが何かを抽出してくれたなら、それが聡子に効かないわけがない。
Do shrine maidens take confessions? If they do, she's doing a great job being a shrine maiden at this age.
これは賭けになります。聡子ちゃんが果たして受け入れてくれるかどうか。
聡子に伝える必要はありません。聡子にとってhinimizawa症候群を知ることは心の深い傷をもう一度えぐることにしかならないのだから。
What did she mean by those words? When I realized it later, I was surprised at how thoughtful and perceptive she was. Maybe that is confirming she killed her parents and she can't face it.
解剖計画を中止させましょう。
Alright, there we go. That was one of the things, right? Stopping the dissection.
北条聡子に対する C103 投与実験に変更します。せめて 1% でもうまくいく確率が上がるように努力します。
大丈夫ですよ。絶対にうまくいきますです。
そんな楽観してはいけません。
大丈夫なのです。もう決まってることなのですから。これは古出神社の巫女様の心強いお告げです。ファイトオーなのですよ。
Haven't heard her say that in a while. I like how Irie just flat out said that he admitted that he was going to dissect her. I mean, I know Rika knew, but he's not very good at keeping things a secret. Alright, so we should be able to do the one with stopping the dissection, which I think is a sacrifice one. Right? Or it's H17... Yep, there we go. We should be able to do this one. H170. C103's implementation on Satoko is going well so far. It wouldn't make any difference to me if the experiment failed. However, Irie's extraordinary focus and attention to the experiment has avoided Satoko Hojo hallucinating or turning into a vegetable during the experiment. And surprisingly, we see prospects of her returning to normal life despite reaching L5. C103 still has many issues, but this experiment proved that even a person who has reached L5 can be cured. I didn't believe in it at first, but I guess I have to acknowledge Irie's hard work. Only Irie could have done this. He was tormented by naive humanism and didn't want to make mistakes, and that is why he felt obliged to cure Satoko Hojo. The reason why I dislike Irie isn't because of his achievements or abilities, but because of that weakness. But this time I had to praise him for it.
入江所長のレポートを拝見しましたわ。脱帽と言わざるを得ません。
いえ、私の研究者としての職務を果たしたに過ぎません。その結果、医者としての職務も果たせたなら、私にとってはそれに勝ることはありません。
今や聡子ちゃんは私たちにとって最も重要な検体になったと言っても過言ではないでしょう。何しろレベル5に至りながら生還した初めての人間なのですから。
その通りです。彼女を社会生活に復帰させ、経過を見ながら長期観察に切り替えていきます。彼女には毎週日曜日にこちらに来てもらって検査を受けてもらえるよう話をするつもりです。
しかし C103 を日に3回も注射する義務と毎週日曜日に検査に訪れる義務を彼女にどう説明されるおつもりで？彼女には何の病気の自覚もないのに。
そこは今うまく納得してもらえる話を考えています。今考えているのは私の研究論文に協力してもらうというものです。 栄養剤の注射を毎日してもらい、毎週日曜日にその効果を検査する。その代わりに研究協力費としていくらかを支払うという感じです。
I guess Irie is determined to cure Satoko Hojo no matter what. He seems determined to keep her off the dissection table. He and I are in different positions, but I don't have any complaints about his naive ideals, so long as they translate directly into passion for our research. If his plans can be put into effect and produce a different result than the dissection would, then they'll still be useful to the overall understanding of the Hinimizawa Syndrome. I have nothing against Satoko Hojo. It's only that I see her as a research specimen. If she can be useful in that capacity without being dissected, that's perfectly fine with me.
日に3回もの注射となれば、これは本人だけでなく、保護者の方の同意も不可欠です。確か、ご両親が亡くなってからは、叔父夫婦に親権が移っていましたね。そちらに一度、相談に伺おうと思います。メイへの怪しげな研究協力を承諾してもらえればいいのですが。
Their thing is like, oh, she's getting paid? Yeah, absolutely. We don't give a shit what you do to her. Drill a hole in her head. We don't care.
大丈夫ですわよ。そのための研究協力費ですもの。
Exactly.
月に10万か20万も振り込んでやれば大喜びしますわ。
それだけの予算はありますか？
もちろん、二郎さんを納得させる資料を作りさえすれば。
わかりました。それは私が作ります。あと、さとこちゃんに振動をかけないよう指導しておく必要もあります。レベル5をぶり返すことになったら大変ですからね。噂では、叔父夫婦はとても現金な方だとか、金銭で丸め込むのは可能かもしれません。それらの指導も私の方できっちり行うつもりです。
I've heard Satoko-chan isn't getting along with her aunt and uncle. I never thought that would affect us in any way, but now Erie has to deal with them. Maybe he's developed some sense of responsibility or duty as her guardian. I don't really care. The more responsible he feels, the more progress our research makes. That'll be a plus for me.
それはそうと、H17 丸番台についての。
ええ、入江所長の成果に比べれば足元にも及びませんが、一応の研究成果を出せましたわ。
本当に皮肉ですね。彼女を錯乱から救う治療薬を作っていた研究所で、その傍らでは彼女を直ちに錯乱させる危険な薬が作られていたのですから。
That was my work. In fact, even if I asked him, he wouldn't have agreed to be involved. This dangerous reagent was developed during the process of uncovering the mechanisms behind how the pathogens controlling Satoko Hojo's brain could induce derangement or paranoia in their host. To put it bluntly, injecting H170 into a patient with Hinimizawa Syndrome forced them to express terminal symptoms. It threw the brain into a simulated state of agitation, intentionally forcing the pathogen to grow unstable. If we continue researching this, it will be possible to drive anyone with Hinimizawa Syndrome violently insane at any time. Studying the mechanism behind that will help to solve the syndrome's mysteries. So this study on H170 will be extremely important to future research. Also, this medicine has military applications, as the client requested. At this point, there's absolutely no use for it. But once our research progresses a bit further, this H170 could be spread at the right moment to cause a certain type of reaction. Compared to a killer virus, it seems like a useless pathogen. But there's no way to detect it in a dead body, and it makes it look as though the person just went insane spontaneously, so it must have some useful applications. The Marco Polo Bridge incident threatened to end research on Hinimizawa Syndrome before. A historically important incident like that couldn't have been created by a killer virus. But it's possible with Hinimizawa Syndrome. The elders of the Alphabets Project, the sponsor for our research, can think whatever they want about that. I don't care how they use what I've learned. My purpose is to solve the mysteries of Hinimizawa Syndrome and to make people realize how important this research is. Also, to make people acknowledge my grandfather's accomplishments and achievements. Any military applications were just byproducts of the process that I didn't care about.
クライアントにとっては、高野さんの成果の方が喜ばれるでしょう。 来期の予算取りが楽になるかもしれませんね。
情熱だけでは研究は続けられませんものね。先立つものがなければ。
これだけの潤沢な資金を提供してくださるスポンサーさんには頭が上がりません。これだけのお金が公費から出ているのですから。
日本という国は私たちが想像しているよりずっと豊かなのかもしれませんね。公費は公費でも表に出せない黒い公費でしょうけれどね。
Erie has no idea what I had to go through to get that money. Anyway, our research is going extremely well. We don't know what we'll find out about Hinimizawa Syndrome, but I'm sure every mystery will eventually be solved. I can hardly wait. What the syndrome indicates is that humans are simply empty containers, and what we believe to be our will is simply the actions of parasites that live in our brains. If that mystery was solved, it would have a greater impact than anything else in history. That is a truth which nobody wants to believe. This is an achievement my grandfather predicted back during his time. I know now. I know the reason why my grandfather was so fascinated by his work. Okay. Alright guys, so that will do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely learned some more interesting things. A lot of Erie related things. This felt like a very Erie central episode, but I'm happy to learn about him and his, reasons for why he does what he does, and some more stuff about Satoko. The big thing I want to know is about confirming Satoko's parents' death, if she had any involvement, and Satoshi. Those are my two big things I want to know about. So maybe we'll find out in the next episode. It seems like I'm about halfway through, so we're chugging along here. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye. Special shout out to my top tier patrons: Namara Kito, Sparky, iCognito, Simon Rax, Mad Goldsmith, Harry Gazif, and Asborn Kennedy.